probably everybody, I think I'm looking through the attendees. I think most of you guys are familiar with us, but this is hosted by Startup CPG. We're here to try to do everything we can do to help brands to give you a better chance of success. And today, the thing that we can do is introduce you to Nadine and Jose and Nicholas from Heinemann Americas. I think for me, one of the best things about moving to Miami is just the amazing people that I've met down here who are very different and super interesting compared to all the other cities that I've been in, and was lucky enough to get connected with Nadine through a friend in common, people who are just like, really connected in the tech stuff that's happening here, and introduced us, and we became fast friends, and then got to meet Jose, and very excited to meet Nicholas here as well. And I've been in the industry for a while, and I don't know anything about duty free. I know a couple things. Number one, people say when you're on vacation, your mind is open to discovering new brands. That's the thing that everybody says. And like, yeah, for sure. I remember all the times I've been in an airport going somewhere and like picked up a new pair of sunglasses or something, just like totally new. Like, I don't know, I'm feeling very free. I don't need to stick to all my usual habits. Or especially maybe like an alcohol that I've sampled in one of the duty-free stores, that just because like, I don't know, my dad always made us get to the airport really early for family trips. And like when I was old enough to drink alcohol, I think I would like maybe have a sip of something, be like, wow, this is good. I never would have tried this otherwise, because it's a big risk to take a chance on something new at a bar. But yeah, so in terms of like airports, airport retail, duty free, airline snacks, cruise lines, and like right out my window is the biggest cruise line port, the port of Miami, and just watch those ships go. I'm like, because I'm launching a brand, like, how do I get my brand on there? That would be amazing. And so this is the day, I think, where we can all just kind of learn what exactly goes on in the duty-free channel, which is like just to demystify it and have a real kind of knowledge transfer working session. Program for today is that we're going to go through kind of three main big blocks. We're going to go through channel, product, and customer. And obviously these guys are going to be able to tell you way more about that. But Heinemann Americas, if you guys aren't already familiar, is one of the largest duty-free operators in the world. And just super lucky to have this amazing team here. I mean, not very often that you get, like CEO and like head buyer and, like coming in just to really like take time out of their Saturday when afterwards we couldn't be at the beach, teaching all of us in the community about this channel. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you everyone for attending as well. And I see a couple questions coming in. So duty free, and also we can talk about what food service means on cruise ships. Please post any other questions in the chat as we're kind of going throughout the day. Yeah, maybe, what do you think, Nadine? Should we do just a quick round of intros for you guys first before we jump in?
Yeah, great. No, Daniel, first of all, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity and the platform to talk about the industry we love so much, duty free. We are super excited about duty free, and we also feel like, or I feel like, once you are in duty free, it's like kind of a positive disease. You kind of infected, and you can't let go of it. So yeah, just a quick information about myself. I'm Nadine, and as you can hear from my accent, I am not American. I'm originally from Germany, have been living in this beautiful city of Miami for 5.5 years now, and I'm the CEO of Heinemann Americas, and we talk a little bit more about our company, especially about our parent company, during the session. Yeah, so super excited to be here with my two favorite colleagues, Jose and Nicola. Hi. Yeah, we are all sitting together, so just that you guys know, we have a little bit of a morning session. I already made some breakfast for them, and I hope that the guys gonna say it was really delicious.
It was really delicious. Michelin star quality.
All right, sorry.
Is the sound good enough if I speak like that, or should we switch mics?
I can hear you okay, like that.
Just a little bit. So, hi everyone, good morning, my name is Nicola. I'm in Nadine's team. I'm the sales director for Heinemann Americas. Been in the travel retail industry since I think 13 years now. Started the headquarters in Germany, spent several years with Bacardi, and in several global sales roles. And now since 3 years, really happy to be here in Miami. It's an awesome place. And yeah, as Nadine said, sticking to the travel retail industry because it's just a great place to be. So happy to meet all of you.
Great, and happy to be here. Happy to see you again, Daniel. For those of you that we didn't have the pleasure of meeting from the first session that we did, my name is 𝐬𝐲, and I'm Director of Customer Experience for Heinemann Americas. I've dealt with the entire commercial operations as well for the company. I've been with the company for 7 years, but in travel retail itself, a little over 20 years, I want to say. So it just seems like yesterday that I was introduced to the channel, but once you're in the channel, it is so dynamic, so diverse. It's fast moving. It's just a wonderful place to do business in. And I'm looking forward to sharing a lot of knowledge with you all today. So happy to be here.
All right, perfect. I'm super pumped for this. Just like reminded again what a super special source of knowledge this is. So thank you guys again. Nadine, what do you have? I don't know if you have something that you want to specifically talk about, or I mean, I can ask a bunch of questions, or how do you prefer?
Yeah, we have prepared presentations for you for you guys. So the idea from our side is, because it's a boot camp, and boot camp usually mean that both all sides need to do something. So the idea really is that we use the presentation as a base, which we have done, but then please shoot all the questions you have, and then we can talk in more details. Yeah. So now comes for me always the most exciting moment when I have to share my presentation, because I'm always nervous.
Perfect. And I have that poll whenever you want also.
Alrighty. Oh yeah, you know what? Let's start with this before we go into the presentation.
Okay, I can launch the poll while you're getting set up. So just a quick poll, guys, as we're getting Nadine's presentation up. So if you guys don't mind answering, so just two quick questions on this poll. Number one, do you currently have products listed in the duty-free channel? So that's just a yes or no. And then if no, like, have you actively considered it? Are you already working on it? Or you're like, yeah, I want to do that, but I'm not sure how. And no, I haven't even thought about it. I'm here to learn about it today. Okay, this is super cool to see these responses coming in live. Okay, I'll go ahead and end the poll just since we've already got, let's see, over 2/3 of people have already responded. So I'm going to end it now. Okay, so no surprise there for me, which is 0% currently have products listed in the duty-free channel, and 0% are already working on it. So this is clean slate, split between I'm not sure how to get started, but I am really trying to, or I'm just very curious about it. So
yeah, that's great. That's exactly the kind of response we wanted to hear. So that's great.
Okay, cool. Poll. I'm closing the poll. Nadine, it's all yours.
Alrighty. So hold on, I have the poll still here. So can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Can I? Yeah, now I can switch. Alrighty.
It's not on presentation mode, so I'm not sure if you can put presentation
Can I put it on presentation mode? I can.
Yes, got it.
Yes. So what I'm gonna do from my side with you guys is, first I want to give you a quick intro into the Heinemann Group, then really talk about duty free. What is duty free? Talk about the different sales channels within duty free, the key players, and then also market penetration. And last but not least, talk about trade shows and trade press and so forth, because this is a very closed ecosystem. Starting talk about a little bit about Heinemann with you guys. Actually, Heinemann is a very fascinating company. We are 142 years old. So actually very, very, very old company, and the only still 100% family-run company within the top 10 duty-free retailers. We are now run in the fifth generation by our CEO Max Heinemann. I'm talking about, always when I talk numbers, I talk pre-COVID, because 2020 and 21 have been kind of anomalies, as we all know. So 2019, our group turnover was 5.2 billion. We are serving about 40 million passengers globally worldwide, and we had 7,400 employees. And you can also find us in all the different sales channels I'm going to talk about in a second. Our vision is the Heinemann family, first choice in travel retail worldwide. What is important to us here to mention is first choice means we don't need to be the biggest one, but we want to be the best one in what we do. And our mission is we live and breathe service, and we create value in an inspiring and emotional way. So yeah, very quick overview about the Heinemann Group. Now I want to talk about what is actually duty free. And I think because I took it from the Duty Free World Council, so maybe it's best if I kind of read this to you. So duty-free shops are exempt from the payment of certain local or national taxes. And normally with the requirement that the goods are only sold to travelers who will take them out of the country. And then sometimes the duty-free industry is also confused with other channels. So what is duty-free not? Duty-free is not cross-border trade. It's not duty not paid. And it's not free zone sales. So I'm sure that you come across those names, but this is not how the duty-free industry is defined. Duty-free is a highly regulated retail environment governed by custom allowance. And you find duty-free in airports, ports, ferry, cruise ships, land borders. And all of those operations are really governed by national custom authorities. What kind of products you can sell in duty-free vary by jurisdiction, and therefore also different rules apply, and different rules apply for duty-free calculations, allowance restrictions, and other factors. So there is no unanimous answer to this. This is different by state, by country, by continent, yeah, just different. And then in some areas of the world, and this is in the non-EU Europe, Australasia, Middle East, and Latin America, you can also buy duty-free goods on arrival. Meaning when you arrive in a country at an airport, before you pass customs, you can still buy duty-free. Then there is another term, which is also part of the duty-free world, which is called travel retail. And travel retail means that this is a retail environment in an area where there is a proof of travel needed. But those purchases are subject to taxes and duties. Any questions from anybody around what actually duty-free is?
I just wanted, that's wild. I didn't realize that in so many countries you could buy it once you get there. I guess because we can't do that in the US, right? But for like Latin America, I mean, I have a bunch of Latin American friends here who I know always talk about taking booze home for like weddings and stuff. I didn't realize that they could just pick it up there on arrival. That's super interesting.
You can, and I mean, maybe just also to give you some numbers, we have an arrival store, which I always like to quote because I think it's so impressive. It's in Oslo. And in Norway, those of you who have traveled to Norway know that alcohol tax is extremely high in the local market. So we have this arrival store, and on a Sunday, which is the most busiest day at the airport, we sell about 10,000 bottles of wine every day in this arrival store.
Per day?
Per day, per Sunday.
Per Sunday.
And that meant that we had to find new ways on how to replenish shelves. So we had to develop this new system because, you know, selling 10,000 bottles of wine in one day at an airport, we were not able to really like stock the shelves in the normal way. So we were developing this system that we're stocking shelves from behind. We had to find new ways of how to get people through the cash tills as quickly as possible. Because yeah, again, selling 10,000 bottles of wine a day, it's quite a number.
Wow, what lucky wine companies get to be in there.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we know what duty-free is, and let's now maybe dive a little bit deeper on how duty-free started and what duty-free is today, and how better to do this with some pictures. So duty-free actually started at Shannon Airport in 1947 with sales to passengers flying from Ireland to the US. And this is the first duty-free shop in the world. And now I want to share with you some pictures or also some numbers first and then some pictures about what duty-free is today. So duty-free in 2019 was an industry which was worth $85.4 billion US, and therefore it's also called by the industry the sixth continent. And despite now the heavy dip due to COVID, duty-free is still on track to be a $140 billion US industry by 2027. If you look at the regional share, Asia Pacific with nearly half of the revenues coming from this region is the biggest region. Europe, 27%, second biggest. Americas, Middle East, and Africa. And then product split is you have perfume and cosmetics as the #1 product, wines and spirit #2, fashion accessories 3, tobacco #4, watches, jewelry, fine writing 5, electronic gifts #6, and confectionery and fine food with 7%. That's still the smallest category right now. But don't forget also that this is really a view on a general view on the duty-free industry. If we now go more into the different channels, water stop, airports, and so forth, the split of category might be very different.
What's the reason that APAC, Asia Pacific, is so big for split by region? Is that just because of like penetration of modern trade, or like modern grocery stores is a little different there, or any?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you look at the airports, they have like really some of the biggest, most beautiful airports in general, but then also from a retail perspective, they have these like huge airport retail malls. I would say there is also a big what they call duty-free downtown business, and I don't talk about it specifically because it's mostly for a fashion, accessory, and beauty, so that's why it's not so relevant here for this group. But this is a massive business, so you buy downtown and then you get the product delivered to the airport, and when you leave the country you pick it up. Then Asians are also known being big spenders, huge spenders in like high-end luxury as well. So this is why Asia Pacific is a huge market, and it still continues, although it's already the biggest market, it continues also being the biggest market from a growth perspective.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, and then as I have promised, so you sort of the store at Shannon Airport in 1947, how everything started. Here I have a couple of slides with some pictures of Heinemann stores. I chose Heinemann stores, but you know, I could also choose other stores. I just wanted to give you an idea of, let's say, the level of sophistication of retail, of the retail environment in duty free. And here I brought you some airport examples. And what you can see here, because I guess that's interesting for this audience, in our stores, we always have local elements which are different from location to location. So for example, you have on the left-hand side Frankfurt Airport, and this represents the German forest. So this we developed this together with a German architect, and we always ask the architects to bring in, let's say, the local flavor or localization into the design as well. So here you see Frankfurt Airport as a representation of the German forest. Then Sydney, you see those like plants hanging down from the ceiling. This is the jacaranda trees, which are well known in Australia, and so forth and so forth. Then here I also brought you some pictures around with digital elements, especially Copenhagen Airport, where we have something which is called Look Lab, where you can, through VR, like AI VR technology, you can have those lipstick bars where you can digitally try on lipsticks. Jose, maybe you can say a couple of words about this.
I think what's interesting about these pictures goes back to your question, Daniel, as to why would APAC or Europe have such a larger share than the Americas? To me, one of the driving factors is the fact that you get a lot more investments from the landlords, from the airport development groups into building up terminals that look like shopping malls. And in turn, what that does is the operator then is on a frenzy to look at, well, how can we make that customer experience different? What new brands do we bring in? And it's not just in core categories like beauty, it's categories across the board, even discovery brands within consumables, confectionery, or snacking. And you'll see some of this as well coming up. But you could see from the pictures here that trickle down effects that it has when a airport authority or builder or contractor is looking at the next big experience and turning this into a destination. So when you say, Daniel, hey, we wanted to get there early for the shopping, for all the activities, this is very much the mindset of travel retail in Europe and in Asia. I think the Americas is still not quite there yet, and you can see proof of it in the airports that you fly out of in the international terminals, but it'll get there. And I think we see this from tenders that are being submitted and what airport authorities or local commission government groups want to do with their airports.
Thank you, Jose.
Sure.
I also wanted to share a couple of other pictures with you just to see that really also the luxury world is represented in airports. Here is an example of Istanbul Airport, which is the largest airport from a space perspective for travel retail, duty free. So you see all the big names. You see Louis Vuitton, Hermes, Dior, Fendi, Ferragamo, and we could name many more. In total, it's 120 luxury brands which are represented at this airport as well. And then also wanted to share some of our pictures from a cruise industry perspective. Also, this is an area where we see that really the retail is evolving more and more. And we brought you some pictures here. You see the Carnival Mardi Gras, and it's in the middle. This is one of our latest ships, and then also the Royal Caribbean Odysseys of the Sea. Those are the two ships which we launched at the end of July. And this is really a completely different level of retail than what you maybe have seen on, or what you see on the older ships in the cruise retail industry. All right, so now let's dig a little bit deeper in the different channels. Yeah, as I said, that there are a variety of channels within duty free. So duty free is not just airports, and those channels really have completely different customers, completely different, requirements and so forth. And I'm talking about it really high level. And if you want to dig a little bit deeper, please shoot questions as many as you want. So airports is still the biggest channel. It represents, from a revenue perspective, about 60% of the global travel retail business. In total, in the world, there are 1,000 international airports where basically duty free would be possible to do, but the top 100 already represent 70% of the traffic. I don't know the exact number of how much they represent of revenue, but I think it's even above the 70%. And then also, what is really important is when you look at airports, I said all the channels are different, but also airports are different depending on nationality, depending on, is it leisure, is it business travel, and so forth. So you really need to look very deep and understand the profile and the passenger mix. Also important to know when you talk about airports are really the shop window. I used to work for 𝐂𝐿𝐵 in travel retail before I joined Heinemann, and for us it was always kind of the window of the world. So you really have a fantastic global audience going through those airports, and because the audience is so global and it's this window to the world, this also means that this is maybe the most competitive of all the channels, and this is also where the brands usually spend the majority of their money. So it's, of course, it's a costly channel, but at the same time it also gives you a lot of exposure, but it's a competitive channel as well. And then in airports, and especially this is something in which is maybe more unique to the US than anywhere else, because in the US, convenience stores play a very, very important role. So you have on the one side a duty-free stores where gifting is maybe the more important focus, and then you have on the convenience store where consumption is the bigger focus. So this is airports. Questions around this, because as I said, I'm really touching this only on a very high level.
I think just what I didn't understand at the beginning, it just kind of not totally specific to this, but like what you guys do, yes, it's those like classic duty-free stores that you see, but then also a lot of the other retail that happens in the airport that's not just duty free, all of which are opportunities for brands, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, for example, we just opened our first chocolate store at Amsterdam Airport, which is Tony Choco. What is it called, Jose? I always
Tony
get it.
𝐭𝐭�𝐫𝐭𝐮𝐩.
Tony Chocolonies, which is an organic
Yeah.
chocolate brand, and we have opened just a standalone boutique for chocolate only. So yeah.
You did a store just around their brand as a boutique?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh wow, that's cool. Those, I mean, they've been in the news a bunch this year. I think they got sold or got a big investment from one of the big companies, but that's cool. That's super cool to think about as a goal for a brand, like long-term, get your own airport boutique.
Yeah.
How did that happen with you guys? They approached you, or how did you?
We started a relationship with them already a couple of years ago when they were really starting with the business. They were quite small when we started working with them. I don't know, who approached whom, maybe one of our buyers who look into new brands and emerging brands, or if they contacted us, this I don't know. But we started working with them. We got exclusivity for the duty-free channel and we grew together. And then because the collaboration worked so well, we decided to do a store together at Amsterdam Airport.
Well, I think you definitely just got everybody's attention who's watching right now. What? This is where that starts. This is the first time to start making a relationship, and then we'll all have airport boutiques. Cool.
Cool. Then let's go maybe to the other channel, which is border stores. And border stores, there are more than 2,000 border stores at border crossings in the Americas, Africa, Eastern Europe, and Asia. And let's say border stores, what they do, they take really advantage of a different price level or a different sales tax level, and I call it on the other side of the border. I just give you one example. We have a big border shop business between, in a way, also the non-existing border now, because it's our European Union, between Germany and the Czech Republic. It's we basically have, I think, 15 stores at different former border crossings, and the difference here is how we get people into the store is through coffee, because in Germany there is a very high coffee tax, which is not in the Czech Republic, although now we are one like European Union. But so people would come and would drive to the other side of the border and buy coffee, and then while they're already there, we also get them to buy other products. We have stores which are about 12,000 square feet. Then there is also most of the time a gas station next to it, because also petrol is much cheaper on the Czech side versus the German side. So this is how border shop business works. You have a huge border shop business also in Brazil, and at the borders to Brazil, in the countries which have borders to Brazil. It's a huge business, and there is even this like border shop tourism. So people like really take their car across the border and buy just for the sake of buying. You can't do this at US borders because to be able to be eligible to buy, for example, on the Canadian side, you need to leave the US for more than 24 hours, and you need to leave it even for more than 72 hours to get certain allowances. I put here down that for the dutyfreecanada.com website is really super informative, because it's highly regulated, as I said. So you can't buy if you are below 24 hours. Between 24 hours and 72 hours, you have a certain allowance. If you stay longer than 72 hours, you have a different allowance. So that's very, very interesting to see. And as I mentioned to you guys before, it really always depends on the country. So the countries at the Brazilian border, they have maybe completely different allowances than Canada, US, Mexico and US, different allowances. You really need to dig really deep into each of those countries. Usually, and I mentioned this, like with our store, it's 12,000 square feet, more like a supermarket convenience store location. So this is the kind of products which are thought of. They are more the day-to-day need to cover the day-to-day needs, and it's not so much about gifting. And some of the border crossings are really like big domestic shopping mall type of stores.
Yeah, and if I can add, in this channel specifically, the comparison to the domestic market is super heavy because you are competing against the domestic market. So in terms of product offering, you can only go in there if there is really a price advantage for that product versus the domestic market. So it's very competitive.
All right. Then let's go to the next channel, airlines. So the last few years, especially with the emerge of low-cost carriers, what you see more and more that there's a shift from free food and beverage in all the different classes to a buy-on-board model, especially in economy class or in the one-class models of the low-cost carriers. So this means that there is huge opportunity there, because in the past, while this was free, so it was a cost center for the airlines, now being a buy-on-board model, now it's a revenue model for the airlines. So airlines are really looking for innovative, healthy options to compete with food and beverage offerings at airports. Because I especially in the US, maybe more than in other countries, it's quite normal, because you know that you don't get food for free anymore in the airline or in the plane. So what you do is you buy something in a restaurant. And what the airlines are trying to do is really try to develop a compelling food and beverage offer, so that you're not buying in the restaurants in the airports, but that you're buying in the on the plane. Also, when we talk about first and business class, we also see that there is an upgrade of quality of food needed, because ticket prices are very high, and this is one way of differentiating. And then the other channel in duty free is in-flight sales. This is something which you see less and less, but there are still, especially legacy carrier like a British Airways, like a Lufthansa and so forth, they still do in-flight sales. And there the focus is mostly on gifting and premium offers in the confectionery category. So this is the, let's say, high level, the airline channel. Any comments from my colleagues?
No, I mean, there's a lot to talk about on the airline. I think just really one fact that immediately comes to my mind is that on airlines, space is everything, right? They are selling out the trolley. You know, everybody knows this. It comes to me when you go with the trolley to the aisle. But that space is so limited that the product offering needs really to drive a lot of margin per cubic centimeter, or how you say it, to make it valuable for the cruise line to list a product. Yeah. So it needs to be a fast turn. It needs to be a high margin for the cruise line. Because sorry for the.
Like me, yes, I know.
Yeah, so that it's worth putting it on a small trolley and give the space to this particular product. And of course, at the same time, the packaging is extremely important. I mean, Jose will talk later about the packaging, but in airlines, it really needs to be optimized to fit into that space of a trolley to be packed the perfect way. So just a couple of facts around the airlines.
Thank you, and I'm glad you were also saying cruise line like me. Okay, now we can talk cruise lines. So we have cruises and ferries as then the next channel to look at. So globally, there are about 300 cruise ships, and there are on those 300 cruise ships about 4,000 bars and 300 duty-free stores. So there is an opportunity not only in the duty-free store, but also in the bars, and also maybe on the buffets of the cruise lines. Cruise line, and again, we're not talking 2020 and 2021, but cruise line is really a growth channel with 30 million plus passengers, and I don't know, 40-50 new ships already signed and in the yard count currently being built. It's still very much of an American market. 50% of the destinations are within the Americas, and then mostly focused on the Caribbean. And for example, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and Port Canaveral that are the three biggest cruise ports in the world, and 25% of the world's cruise lines departures are departing from those three ports. 35% of the business is in Europe and 15% of the business is in Asia. However, more than 50% of the guests are American. I would guess about maybe 70% of the guests are actually Americans. When we talk about CPG category, then the focus is on spirits, highly promotion driven, and then also selected confectionery, but more in the gifting opportunity side, because consumption is mostly free on board the ships, so it's not so much focused on self-consumption. Jose, Nicola, anything to add?
Yeah, I saw there was a question around the cruise business. I think we somehow, well, the day-to-day, we should touch on the F&B business versus the retail business. So I don't have it yet on my slides, but I think it's something we could talk about.
Yeah.
That it's just a different model if you want to go into the F&B, so the food and beverage on board the cruise line, or if you want to go for the duty-free business.
Maybe you can cover this later in your
we can touch this later when we talk about the different the business models.
That's for Anjali's question about the airline channels.
Nadine, there was a question around the airlines.
Oh, sorry, no.
Anjali had asked, are all of these airline channels, like when you buy on board, is that all part of duty-free channel?
Yes, I would say yes. They are still part of the same kind of ecosystem, and I touch upon it in a couple of slides later. You know, on who are the players, who are the decision makers. So maybe Anjali, if you could bear with me one second on this, and then I check in with you just to make sure that I have answered the question correctly.
Cool. And Christine mentioned it's a little hard to hear Nicholas. I think because right now they're all, so Nadine, Nicholas, and Jose are all in the same room, so only one of them has their microphone on. But when it's Nicholas's turn to present, we'll switch to his microphone and everything. But we'll try to be as clear as possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Then also quickly touching on ferries, there are about 100 ferries globally with 1,000 bars and 100 duty-free stores, carrying about 40 million passengers, and this is mostly a phenomena in Northern Europe. And their ferry business is very big in ferries between Denmark and Norway, but also ferry now again since Brexit between France, or the channel, you know, the UK channel between France and the UK is also a big ferry business. So yeah, very focused, very concentrated on a couple of countries only, but huge in spending. And here the focus is on spirits and confectionery, gifting and consumption, but also highly promotion driven.
One more question that just came in from Effie. Effie was asking what cruise ships Heinemann operates on other than Carnival. She's saying that she's in Virgin Voyages in bars already. Her brand is 𝐂𝐏𝐆, which is 𝗂𝐏𝐆 liqueur, and she's based here in Miami. So Nadine, we'll all have to meet up sometime.
Absolutely, pleasure to do so. We are not on Virgin Voyages. We are with Royal Caribbean with Carnival, and then we are also on some of the German cruise lines, which are really focused on the German market, which is AIDA, which is part of Carnival Corporation. We are with TUI, Mein Schiff. This is part of the Royal Caribbean group, and then with some smaller, more high-end luxury brands, again focusing on the German market.
And she was asking about Norwegian also.
We are not. No, we're not. We know the people in Norwegian very well, but we don't work with them.
Cool, thanks.
Okay. What's happening? I can't turn the page. Give me 1 second, guys. I can't.
Are you in the presentation window?
I think I am.
I'll ask. So maybe I'll just go to another one of the questions, maybe for Jose or whoever wants to answer. So Irina, I know we'll get into this later, but she's asking, how do you structure your buying team with so many different channels? Is it by channel or by category or country?
Hi, Jose.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. I came from someone named Irina because I actually have my lead buyer. Her name is Irina as well. So that kind of was quite a coincidence. But Irina, to answer your question, most of the operators structure their buying teams by category. So you would have typically your director followed by your head of or lead buyer. And then you have buyers specifically assigned to each categories. For CPG, normally it falls into one buyer that's broken up into most likely titled confectionery buyer. That person's probably looking after CPG, gifting, and snacking.
You said by channel?
No, so first by well, again, it's first by region. So depending on which buyer you're speaking to, responsible for a region. Then that team is broken down into categories, and as it relates to the audience.
What's the category again? By category, you mean by type of store? Or?
No, it's literally by type of product category. So you would have a buyer for watches, a buyer for liquor and tobacco. For this audience, there's usually a buyer for confectionery, and confectionery for us and really encompasses both gifting confectionery. It encompasses snacking, so salty, and likely consumables. So if there's any beverage items around that as well, non-alcoholic beverage items, that will probably encompass that as well.
Okay. I think there was another question coming in.
Oh, yes, I see another one. So Emily is asking, what is a statement of qualifications?
So if you give us a few minutes, we'll get to that. I have that as part of my presentation. So just give us a few and I'll touch on that on detail. And if you have any more questions when I get to that part, then just feel free to stop me and ask.
Okay, then let's talk about who are the global players, who are the ones who run the show basically in duty free. And the top 25 travel retailers are basically, you can say that they are covering the world of duty free. So it's quite limited for the fact that it's 80 billion plus industry. I have copied here a page from the Moody David report. And if you really want to get into all the different players in the detail, then I would really invite you to go on the Moody David report. I have the link coming up in a second as well, where they really talk about in detail about each of the different retailers. Biggest retailer is a Dufry group based in Switzerland, but really operating globally. Then Lotte Duty Free, number 2, it's a Korean duty-free company. They are mostly in Asia. Sheila Duty Free, China Duty Free, also Asian duty-free companies. And remember, 50% of the business is actually Asian. So that's also maybe explains why there are so many Asian companies in the top 5. Then you have Lagardère Travel Retail. It's a French company also operating globally, entering South America soon, and they are also here in the US with Paradise, which is a convenience store retailer. Then you have the DFS Group, originally out of San Francisco. They have now changed their headquarters to Hong Kong, mostly operating in Asia. And then you have Heinemann as number 7, as I have mentioned to you, the only family company in the top 10. Then out of Miami, you have Duty Free Americas, which are here. You have Starboard, which is focused on the cruise business, which is part of LVMH, so as DFS Group. And then you also have 360 Duty Free, which is formerly known as DFAS. As I said, I could talk about each of them really in detail, but if you wanna know more, I invite you to read this very extensive report about all those players in the Moody David report. We had more questions coming in. Are they around this as well? Sorry. Let me see.
No, I think the last question was not related to the players, but more to the liquor business.
Okay. Understood.
One question is if you guys will be able to share the presentation or if people should be taking notes.
We can share the presentation. There is no no trade secrets. So absolutely, we can share the presentation with you guys.
Okay. I'm taking also funny photos and putting them on Instagram. Is that okay?
We don't mind the presentation, but we mind the funny photos.
They're all good photos. They're all good.
Okay, let me go. What am I doing wrong that I can't share? Okay, so here I also wanted to give you another information about some of the other players which you have now not seen as the top 25, and this is mostly about the US here. When we talk about food and beverage convenience store, but also about caterers in the airline industry. So you have Autogrill, HMS Host, and SSP. They are global companies which operate restaurants and airports, but also some of the convenience stores. Hudson News, part of the Dufry Group, and Paradis Lagardère, as I've mentioned, part of Lagardère. They are operating a lot of convenience stores within the US airport market. And then you have LSG, Newrest, 𝐂𝐏𝐆 Gourmet. They are catering companies, and those are the companies you would have to work with in an airline environment, both from a buy on board perspective, but also from in-flight program perspective. And while we have now talked about the different players, here I wanted to give you an overview about who are actually the decision makers. So if we look at our different channels, so we have airports, duty-free stores, and food and beverage are usually run by concessionaires. So let's take an airport. So the concessionaire could be Heinemann, could be a Dufry, and food and beverage could be what I had mentioned before, an HMS Host or an SSP. Then from an airline perspective, duty-free store, what would be here the in-flight catalog, is usually run by a concessionaire directly, and food and beverage by a caterer, so an LSG, Newrest, 𝐂𝐿 Gourmet. Just
for people like me that have trouble keeping it straight. So the duty-free stores where you go in and buy the product, walk out with it, and then the food and beverage here we're talking about would be like all of the restaurants and the airlines, the food that they serve on there. Yeah. And when you say concessionaire, you mean for a duty-free store, the person operating that duty-free store, and for food and beverage, like different stores, that it would just be basically they make their own buying decisions.
Yeah, so maybe, and I haven't touched on this, but maybe very quickly touching on also how does the business model in airports work. So airports are, whoever run the airport, it's either the government or it's an organization or company who runs the airport on behalf of the government. They give their, or they, how do you say? Now I'm missing the word. When you do a tender.
They award the
exactly. They do a tender. Easy. So they do an RFP, a procurement, where they ask for different proposals coming in for whoever wants to run the duty-free stores, or the same for food and beverage. And then based on different criteria, this is mostly the concession fee, the price you pay for being in an airport, and then the quality and the selection you offer, then you get awarded either to the right to either run the duty-free store or the food and beverage, the restaurants. So that's what they call in this industry the concessionaires. Does it make sense, Daniel?
Yeah, got it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then on airlines, it's pretty similar. So those who run the duty-free store, when I say duty-free store, this means the in-flight sales, what you can buy in a catalog, the perfumes. Mostly, it's mostly perfumes and makeup.
This is usually on an international flight, not a domestic flight.
Exactly, that's a good point to see. So yeah, also the same thing. The airline would do an RFP, and then a concessionaire would win those business. And but then food and beverage, so everything like the buy on board, what we talked about, all the products you can either buy, or the products which are served for free and business and first class. This is all done by different catering companies, and those catering companies are LSG, Newrest, and 𝐂𝐿𝐵 Gourmet. They are the three big ones operating in the US. Then border stores. Usually there is no food and beverage, and then the stores themselves are also run by concessionaires. Cruise line, similar, it's a concessionaire. Food and beverage, however, this is done directly by the cruise line. So there is no other concessionaire who runs the restaurants or who makes decision on what's going to be sold in food and beverage. This is the cruise line. So the cruise line decides which whiskey is going to be sold at the bars, which vodka, what kind of yogurt they are selling at the buffet, and so forth. This is done in-house. And the same for ferries. The stores, the duty-free shops are operated by a third party, a concessionaire, but the decision about what's being sold at the bar or at the buffet is done in-house by the ferry line. What we would always recommend, because as you have seen, the market, you only have 25, let's say, really significant players in the market. So they usually deal with big volumes. And when we talk about new brands coming in, niche brands coming in, I would always recommend to work with a specialized agent or distributor to enter the market, because otherwise it will be very tough for you to get in front of the buyers of those big companies. And then you have 3 different options. So you have the option 1 is you have an agent or distributor which covers all categories and is present in all channels. So for example, this is Heinemann. So I don't want to overcomplicate, but we are not only a retailer, we are also a distributor. So we also distribute products in all the channels to third party. And then you have agents which are covering specific categories also in all channels. So I give you an example. This is Otis, and Jose can talk a little bit more because he works with them directly. They are specialized in the confectionery category, but they also cover all the channels. And then the third option is specific categories and specific channels. So here I pointed 𝐬𝐻𝐿 as one example. They are focused on the spirits category and they are in the maritime channel. So it's, you kind of need to figure out where you feel most home in a way. But again, I would always recommend to enter the channel by working with an agent or a distributor.
Right.
Okay, so there's a lot of very good information. I just want to make sure I understand the recommendation here. So the special, like an agent, when you use that word agent, remind me again just what the word agent means in this case.
Yeah. So for us, when we differentiate between agent and distributor, so an agent is somebody who would go to let's say to a Heinemann, who would come to us on behalf of the brand and say, hey, I have this great new brand. Do you want to list it?
Okay, so maybe like a broker that some of us use the word broker. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe the broker is maybe it's a better word, like from a domestic market perspective. And then a distributor would be doing the same thing as an agent, but also supply the goods, also be in charge of the delivery. That's how we differentiate in our channel, the two, agent and distributor.
Got it. Okay, and then we have one question from Christine. She's asking, so for food service on cruise ships, you go to the cruise line. What do you, I don't know if you guys have suggestions for how to approach those folks, like, you know, whether the Virgin Cruise Line for their food and beverage or anything like that. Is that like similarly, you should find a broker, or what? How, do you guys have any insight on that one? I know it's not, I think not exactly your specialty, but
no, but I would also recommend to go through a broker. Same thing here, because you know, for example, in some of the cruise lines, there is one person, and this person decides on all the spirits which is going to be sold in the bars. So this person likes to speak to as little people as possible, and it might be easier to get an appointment or to get your brand in front of this person if you are part of an agent who also represents other brands.
Thanks.
Okay, cool.
Oh, one more question. Who are the largest agents or distributors for food and beverage?
That's a good
one.
Right.
So, I mean, for the cruise channel is the question, or for duty free?
Well, this says food. This says food and beverage for all channels.
Oh, wow. So you definitely have different ones. Nadine mentioned a few for the airlines. You mentioned Sky Chefs, Gate Group.
But they are caterers.
They're caterers.
Yes,
She has 𝐬𝐻𝐿 here on the presentation, which do ship channeling, meaning cargo ships, food and beverage, and cruise ships, food and beverage. for airports, I'm not too sure who would be doing a lot of the food and beverage brokering.
Yeah.
One more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Nadine.
No, I just wanted to say, there are many agents and distributors out there. I don't think that there is one which stands out, like what we did with the top 25 and Dufry being the biggest. I don't think that there is one which really stands out as this is the one where you need to be. It's a more fragmented market.
And then Emily is asking, do you know who any of the brokers are for, like, if you're an emerging brand, like most of the people in the audience today, are there any agents or brokers that you would recommend, any that you're familiar with? I don't know of any that really specialize in this channel.
We can definitely do this, and we wanted to recommend at the end anyway to all of you guys that if you feel that this is a channel which is interesting for you, then we are happy. Send us your products, we look at it, and then we can have a 20-minute one-on-one conversation with you and give you recommendations. I think we can't just it's too universal to say, hey, you need to work with this one or this one. I think we would need to see the product. We would need to understand which channels, which regions you want to cover, and then we can make recommendations to you guys.
That's an amazing offer. I hope everybody heard that Nadine and the team are offering to check out your product and then give you some feedback and recommendations on who to chat with. I see Emily's excited. She says some of her Paradise snack packs are on the way. You guys are gonna love them. They're super delicious.
Cool. Yeah, and then I have to round up the, let's say, the intro to the duty-free channel more on a high level. I said here that duty-free is really its own ecosystem, and that's really true. And duty-free is still a lot about networking, about knowing people, personal connections, and so forth. So there are three trade shows which are more focused on, let's say, on the duty-free airport channel. And this is the biggest one, which is every year in Cannes. It's the Duty-Free and Travel Retail Global Summit, every year in Cannes at the end of October, also happening this year in person, however on a much smaller scale. And also there, it really makes sense that you are part of an agent, because space or booths are expensive. The whole experience it's an expensive one, so it really does make sense to be part of a broker. Then there is a special one also for Asia Pacific, which is usually in May. It didn't happen this year in person. It was a virtual event. And then there is one for the Americas, which is usually in March or April, either in Orlando, might move here down to West Palm, or to Fort Lauderdale, Miami. And then there are also specialized exhibitions for airlines, which is the WTCE, which is going to be virtual this year, usually every year in person in Hamburg, where you have all the airline decision makers being part of this. And then there is one in Miami taking place every year. This is the Sea Trade Cruise Global. Having said this, this is not the typical product show. This is more if you want to better understand how the dynamics of the cruise industry work, if you want to maybe make first contacts in this industry, this is a good exhibition to go to. But all the other four others I have mentioned, this is really exhibitions for products as well. We had more questions coming in. Was there anything, Daniel?
No, I think everyone's very excited about the opportunity to send in samples. And Renee was asking if you guys are going to provide like contact info at the end, or how you prefer.
Yeah, yes, we will do this.
Cool.
Okay. And then my last one, it's about the press, because it's its own ecosystem. We also have our own press. I had mentioned the Moody David report as one of the best source of information. And there is also TR Business. And then there is DFNI Online. There is actually a cruise conference happening next week where Jose is going to be a speaker. So if you want to hear Jose speaking and learn more about the cruise channel, then DFNI has a conference, a virtual conference happening. And then Travel Market Insider, it's really a publication which is mostly focused on the Americas. Yeah, so this was let's say, big picture intro into the duty-free channel from my side.
Right on time. First session. Amazing.
Wow, spot on.
So just to remind everybody, and like I see a lot of people typing in the comments how useful this is. This is amazing. I know 1,000,000% more than I did an hour ago. So thank you guys so much. So for anyone who kind of joined a little bit late, this is the team from Heinemann Americas, which is one of the largest duty-free and travel retail operators in the world. And they have made some time for us this morning to tell us how this whole thing works. It is quite nebulous, I think, for those of us on the outside, and they have an incredible career. And so we are super lucky to be joined by Nadine, the CEO, and Jose, who is the head buyer, and Nicholas, who is the head of sales. So very special group, and I think you can see that they're here and really open to all of your questions. So please keep them coming. The general structure, so that was first just about what's the channel all about. So now that we're all kind of like, we've got aligned on some of these terms, now Jose is going to take us through more about the products. And so we'll be talking about, you know, terms and conditions and packaging and logistics, that kind of stuff. And I know we have some questions about margin coming in and like pricing. So hopefully we can cover that stuff as well. And then in the last section, Nicholas is going to talk to us about the customers, like who is shopping these different channels, what's the segmentation, and the kind of customer journey. How do you get people like me to try a new kind of, you know, ice cream or alcohol? And what are some of the activations that you can do, which I know are super important in this channel when you have that big chance for people to learn about your product? How do you make sure they're really going to learn? So with that, I'm going to pass over to my friend Jose.
I'm going to go on mute.
Yeah.
Okay. And then...
Okay, so I will share my screen and get this going. So if, excuse me, for those of you who joined in late, so just a quick introduction. My name is Jose Quadra, and I've been with Heinemann for a little over 7 years. I am a director of customer experience, so I oversee the buying teams, the marketing teams, and the activity management team. So hopefully you will find this very informative. I'm very informative, I'm sure, and I'm
very informative.
Yes. So hopefully you will get a lot of questions here. Sec here. Incredibly informative. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I wanted to start off with touching on these 3 topics around labeling, compliance, and then ending with packaging. But for labeling, we'll start with what everyone already knows. And I'm sure everyone here has had some experience getting to the point where they have to go through FDA labeling and getting FDA approval for their products, right? So we all know what that means to either go through a special agency or broker to get that Food and Drug Administration labeling for your product. But how does this relate to duty-free? Is this required? Do I still need the labeling? And there's different approaches you could take to this. So the short answer is highly recommended that you still do it, even though you will be selling into a duty-free channel. Specifically, if it's an operator that is selling within the United States, that is highly recommended you do so. Now, there are a couple of exceptions here. So cruise ships are exempt from having FDA labeling products sold in the retail shops. Reason being is because the final sell to the consumer is being made in international waters. So very different than in the final sell being made in an airport that's within the United States. I reference Hudson here as an example because if you've traveled, you've seen Hudson stores, and everything that they carry that's consumable will have an FDA label, irrespective of where that store is located in that airport. When you do go into an airport, you'll notice that there's 2 different types of stores. There's what we call pre-security store or duty paid stores. And then there are stores that are past security. Typically, those stores are duty free. So it does happen, and there are certain cases where after you pass security, the shops that you'll find encompass both duty free and duty paid product. And that's why we highly recommend that you do end up having that FDA labeled package already delivered to the operator. An example that comes up to mind is when we had business in the George Bush International Airport in Houston. We were operating actually, I think 3 to 4 different stores in 3 to 4 different terminals. But there were a couple of terminals that really stood out, because even though that terminal received international flights, both arrivals and departures, the store also received domestic flights. And so you wanted to make sure that you were able to sell to both consumers and capture as much of the audience as possible. Usually when someone is shopping a duty-free store and strictly duty-free only, they have to present some credentials like their passport and ticket. But in this case, what we ended up doing for some of these stores located in these terminals that receive both domestic and international, we decided to then work with our brand partners to make sure that everything we brought in that was consumables had that FDA labeling on it. So who were these partners that we worked with, and why did we do it in this way? So just to give you an idea, these are some of the brand partners that we worked with for this operation, in which we had to go through the exercise and process of making sure that we were doing things in a very compliant way, making sure that the labeling was appropriate for multiple reasons, and I'll touch one of those on a bit on later. But also the biggest question that came up was from our brand partners was, well, why should I be doing this? What other factors go into the fact that we need an FDA label or where we don't need an FDA label? So I'll give you 2 examples. Most of you, after the first session that Nadine and I did, I ended up getting a lot of messages about, well, I produce in the United States, I'm based in Ohio, where do I ship to? What is a bonded warehouse? What is a free trade zone? Most duty-free operators will carry inventory in either a bonded or free trade zone. And this is relevant to how then you want to send and package goods. Now, the big difference between a bonded and a free trade zone is that in a free trade zone, the operator could keep stock here without any liabilities of duties and taxes. So there are no import duties in a free trade zone, and there are no import duties when you put something in a bonded warehouse. But in a bonded warehouse, it does have an expiration with US Customs. A bonded warehouse is usually more regulated and controlled by US Customs, where an FTC has less regulatory compliance with US Customs. So one is the shelf life. You bring in confectionery or snacking into a bonded warehouse, it could only be there for about 3 to 5 years, and then you have to technically import into the country and pay duties on it. Whereas a free trade zone, you don't have to.
You haven't sold a confectionery after 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine that for some of the beverage companies, that shelf life is much longer. So, but nonetheless, hopefully you won't carry it that long. A free trade zone, you could also manipulate product here. And this is where it becomes even more important for you brands out there. So look at your packaging. Take a look at how big your case pack is, or your pallet, your master case, your inner case, etc. In a bonded warehouse, there's no manipulation of this. You can't do it. So for us operating on cruise ships, we had one situation where we were buying Snicker bars that came in a pack of, I think, 388 Snicker bars, and that came within a bigger master case and then up to the pallet, right? So we didn't really want to load, 1,000 Snicker bars for one cruise ship at a time, but that's where the FTZ could be more friendly. You deciding to ship to an FTZ, an operator that has an FTZ, allows you to ship in these larger case packs because the operator could then break it open and ship to the end location in inner packs. So the brands that we ended up partnering with here, if you go down the line, are some of the bigger global brands that you probably already know. I left a picture here on Kinder because for compliance reasons, this Kinder Surprise product is something that we couldn't carry in the US. So there's a lot of also regulatory compliance issues with FDA, past packaging, past route to market or compliance that you have to check, because in this case, this product was banned from the US, much like M&M's was also a certain ingredient within M&M's was banned from the US. And so for M&M's, there had to be a different production happening in Europe and a different formulation happening in the US. So you have to be really conscious of that as well, and how it relates to your labeling.
It's what the Kinder Surprise is
bringing
banned.
in something bonded or an FTZ always helps the case to be listed because you're not paying import tariffs on your product. Therefore, you could pass on savings over to the buyer or to the operator.
This one, Jose, this one's banned in the US because, can you hear me or no?
Is Daniel speaking? I can't hear him.
I think he wanted to, but
I was, but but can you hear me? No?
Did we lose Daniel?
yeah.
Otherwise, he will type in the chat, but you can go on.
Okay, great. Okay, so I wanted to give you an example as to why the FDA labeling is so important.
Okay, I'm gonna put on my speaker. I think we just lost the speaker, but I'm gonna put on my speaker.
We did.
Can you guys hear me now? Hello, hello, hello. Okay.
So Mr. Outside.
Okay. I had just a super important question, which is why was the Kinder surprise banned? Is it because of the toy inside?
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, exactly. It was because of the toy inside. FDA regulations didn't allow it, too much of a risk, especially for obviously children.
Right. So okay in some places, but not in the US.
Exactly. Okay, so another reason why you want that FDA label on there, despite it going into a duty-free channel, is because a lot of the global duty-free operators operate a global master database. Whether it's centralized or cloud-based, it allows you to get the product listings into multiple regions much easier because from that first upload of that master data and all the intricacies that are in that nutritional label, a lot of this information, if not all the information, goes into the master database. So transitioning from being listed in the US to all of a sudden being listed in Germany or Spain or whatever region they may be operating makes it a lot faster and easier. And believe me, you don't want to be uploading multiple master data forms or databases multiple times over. You want it there once. So it's always good to have, and it's always, I would say, an essential for the operator as well. Okay, any questions on labeling?
Yeah, sorry if I got
do that.
Yeah, give me 1 second, Daniel. We just need to fix something here.
Oh.
So you have to unmute your speaker.
hello, 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 hello. Hello. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, got me?
We got you.
Oh, so you obviously, I mean, I think probably most people here know that they need an FDA nutritional panel on their products because most of us are going to be selling in the US, so we'll have that. I think, are you saying we should also then have the master one prepared if we want to sell into duty free, or we are okay with just the FDA one?
I think you're okay with the FDA one. The FDA point on that label cross over to multiple regions.
Uh-huh.
So you're okay there.
Okay.
I think the mix of the label, but usually as well, how you're storing it, where you're storing it, depending on, again, the bonded versus FTZ, will end up causing a domino effect when you negotiate cost. And sometimes that can make or break it.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it. Thanks.
Okay, so on packaging, in travel retail, we do have this acronym TREX packaging for travel retail exclusives. And why is this important? I wanted to start off here because as obviously most of us here already have our customized or generic packaging for our products. But in travel retail, the pinnacle of where you want to go to is TREX packaging. And the reasons why you want to go here is because you obviously want to achieve a greater reach. You want to achieve, you already have your loyalty base, but you want to then have added on sales, a higher AUR, because you're now giving them a new offer. You're giving them limited editions. And I'll show you what that looks like. This also gives you the ability to animate. And in travel retail, Nadine, rightfully so, called it the sixth continent. Many airports, many locations in travel retail, you could consider them as advertising mediums. The amount of eyes and footfall that you get on your brand if you animate is tremendous. And then of course, the third reason why you want TREX packaging is because it actually allows you to do a margin builder when you have tight requirements with your buyers. So this is a good way to increase overall weighted margin. It's a good way to show partnership because you're investing in animations. You really are seeing things for the long term, investing into the operations.
Can you,
And
we just had a question from Christine. Can you explain what animate means on or the way you just used it?
Sure. And Nicholas will touch on this a bit more, but animation usually means that you have a highly visible product in a highly visible space, right? And you want to then be able to tell a story in this highly visible space. Now, these highly visible spaces are usually rented out. This is no different than, for example, your local grocery market being able to sell an end cap, right, on an aisle. In this case, it's very similar. It's either an end cap, it could be a dedicated area just to build up an animation. You could go in there, you could, make it look any way you'd want it to look to really tell your brand DNA and be able to tell the brand story. And this is the brand story part's becoming even more important now when a buyer is considering doing an animation. Okay, and just quickly, I dropped in a logo here for the Good Chris Company. This is actually a brand that we found during our first session with you, Daniel. So this is turning out to be something I'm really excited about piloting. We hope that we'll be yeah. So we actually met this brand through CPG startup, and we're looking forward to doing our first pilot with them. So. Okay, great. Yeah, so this is something that we'll probably end up launching and piloting on board our cruise vessels within the gift shops. All right, so most of you are wondering, well, what is it going to take to even get to a Trex point? Where am I at in this process of how a buyer thinks the natural evolution of an assortment could be? Whether you have, 2 or 3 SKUs, or you may have 50 SKUs in your assortment, it doesn't matter. The progression that usually a buyer sees will follow this formulation. So you have your core range, and in your core range, this is the product that obviously will have the highest turnover. This is your bread and butter, but a buyer will demand the highest margins in your core range. This is for sure. And I'll get into exactly what these numbers could mean in a bit. And then from here, you obviously want to show an evolution of the program, added sales by adding in one-shots, seasonal flavors, still high margin expectations from the buyers. Once you're able to show success in these 2 variations, managing a tight assortment, but still being able to bring in, some seasonal items in here and there, pilot, test it, then I think you'll be ready for your Trex packaging. Now, I know what this means on your end. You may have to change or invest into changing your packaging a bit. It doesn't necessarily mean you got to change your ingredients or completely overhaul the product. It could just be the packaging, and that's where tier 3 comes in. So this is now when you have Trex packaging, this is usually where you want to start looking at animations. Give me that head of gondola, give me that HPP space. Let me tell a story around it, why it's so special. Let me reach a larger audience now. Now, the creme de la creme is when you have your Trex packaging and your limited editions bundled into one. The limited editions usually is past packaging. This is usually when you altered your product formulation, when you have truly a limited edition flavor or variation of that it's only going to be here for a short amount of time and then it's gone. This is usually then the expectation that you do have premium animations. And I'll show you what this kind of pinnacle of premium animation could be. And then this is where you could really play with your costs to your buyer and the retails for consumers. This is where I would fully expect for there to be a premium. And that's where you could play with your margins as well.
Then the other question. Last question. Does the
yeah, so Daniel was asking, is the animation like negotiated at the beginning or an ongoing basis?
So the animation is normally negotiated in cycles. So you probably have semi-annual negotiations. Usually an operator will have their menu or their options ready for you at the beginning of the year or late or late in the year of the next 12 months, if not the next 6 months. and you will see, it's almost like an a la carte menu. You will see options on what you want to do with your brand, how much you want to invest. Now, just know that behind the scenes, obviously, buyers already have a set determination on what they want to see for investments. And the buyers will definitely push for you to bring in some new things, try something new, or engage the consumers in a new way. And most of it will be done via these animation stages.
So for the audience here, which will be mostly small brands, like I think, a company like Good Crisp that we all love is, I mean, probably a little bit further along than some of the people in the audience today. So if we kind of translate this slide into like, okay, for everyone thinking about trying to figure out how to approach travel retail and duty free. So it seems like this would be like, you would start with like, look, work with what you have, right? Like selling your core range. You need to figure out how it's going to be high turn for the operator and high margin as well to make it attractive for them because they have limited space. And then maybe I think like 2 would be kind of the next progression. Like while you're doing, when you can start doing well, then you would think about having some seasonal flavors to be able to offer. I think that I just want to make sure I understand the framing of
that's it. That's the progression. And even on tier 1, I mean, again, everything from even how you deliver product, you need to make sure that at least it's flexible enough for the operator. So going back to the example of, if I manufacture overseas and I bring in my stock and pay duties on it, and I'm now stocking it in New Jersey, I don't know, as an example, then by default, you already pay duties on it. It's already a higher cost for a duty-free operator. Duty-free operator always wants to see stock being held in a bonded warehouse or in the free trade zone.
Okay, got it. And guys, keep the questions coming. This is great. I know Emily had asked one other question about labeling, like because Emily, I think is doing your labels through GS1, if that meets FDA requirements for cruise line. I assume if you're doing your labels through GS1 that meet FDA requirements, that would satisfy the requirements for, or the stuff getting in through you guys as well.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool.
That should GS1 should meet many of the requirements.
Cool.
Okay, so what do these numbers mean? How does it translate to me specifically? So as Nadine mentioned, there are multiple duty-free operators out there specializing in different channels and in different regions. The best way I could compress this is that if you are dealing with a duty-free operator, a small regional duty-free operator, such as I only have border stores in Canada, you could probably expect margin requirements to be somewhere in the low 60s to mid 60s, especially around CPG products or confectionery. If you're dealing with an operator who is looking at stores across a continent, all of the Americas as an example, or North American, Caribbean, you're probably looking at mid 60s as the floor to begin with, to get you to the table. If you're now looking at a global operator being listed in the US and Asia and so forth, a couple of airports here and there spread out across, you're definitely going to aim for 70s or low 70s. That's what it's going to take. But by then you should already have, if you're going to be listed in a global scale, you should already have some pretty good success stories with this company to even be considered to reach that tier. For pricing, so a lot of the core products that we sell typically have savings to US local market, meaning, what you buy in duty free could be 10 to 15% cheaper than buying it at your Macy's or buying it at your Saks and so forth. But for CPG goods, this is really dependent on a threshold that each operator will set. So as an example, any goods under $25, I don't require any savings to US local market. It just makes no sense to. Now, usually if a CPG product is over $25, it's probably because I am now considering that price tier to be giftables. And that's a different conversation.
Just a very quick question, a margin question again.
Sure.
And this is around the margin you were talking about in one. Is it the retailer expectation or the distributor Is it sales margin or distributor margin?
No, this is shelf margin. This is from the operator. Okay, not distributor margin. Distributor margin should be much lower.
So maybe just to like talk through a back of the envelope kind of calculation. So let's say like, you know, if I typically sell my like chips or something, let's say you could find it on shelf at a typical store for $5. Maybe like, you know, roughly speaking, let's say then my price to a distributor is like $2.50. They're going to mark it up a bunch. And then the retailer might take like a 35 to, you know, 45% margin on that, which gets you to the $5. So it sounds like then in this case, like what I need to, one, I'm probably not shipping through the same kind of distributor to get to you guys, right? Because it can happen more directly, right? Like direct shipments to your warehouses, I think. So maybe you avoid some of the distributor upcharge or markup.
Right.
So then,
Yeah.
So maybe I would like need to figure out how to have a discount first from the $2.50 because I need to make sure that what's left is gonna, if I want that to hit that $4.99 price, or maybe you're okay at it floating up a little bit, or maybe, but if it's $4.99, I need to already be decreasing my $2.50 wholesale price to build in the, let's say 63 to 70% shelf margin.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Daniel. And I think that the mindset you need to have is that it's one pricing model for doing business in the domestic market. But when you think about duty free, it has to be a completely different pricing model. And if you already built up your operations to sell into domestic, that's okay. You could still make it work. I think it's going to matter where you may have flexibility on your brand or on your operations to see where that extra discount needs to come from.
Okay, so but I think a couple people have questions on this, but I think that's a good way to think about it. Is that like you need to make sure that, like, you know, whether it's Heinemann or any operator, like their margin requirements are higher than a typical store. Their real estate is a lot more expensive as well. So just, you know, candid answer for everybody, you're going to need to discount this product more than when you're selling into a traditional distributor like UNFI, or, you know, if maybe you're trying to hit that same price point, like you're going to be giving a discount to get into this channel. There are a ton of benefits, obviously, to getting into it. All of the visibility that you're going to get from being, and like prestige from being in an airport and, or, you know, cruise line, when people can discover your product, all of that stuff. But build that into your pricing model. Expect that you're going to have to decrease your list price to enable that operator like Heinemann or whoever's margin to be 63 to 70%, and also be ready to activate as well, which is going to be additional margin. So maybe people will be looking at this as a marketing expense in a lot of ways, but tons of benefits, obviously.
Right. If I can just pick on that, if you would mute. Yeah, Daniel, I think you're spot on. Give me a second. All right. No, not yet. Some technical difficulties. You need to mute yourself. What do I know? I think now we're good. Okay, cool. Daniel, you're spot on. And maybe from my Bacardi perspective, the travel retail channel is that brand building channel, right? So you need to see that you're just you're facing different type of customers. You're facing multinationalities in some of the most luxurious environments at the airports, and you can show that you're an international brand somehow, or you're a brand that made it into that channel. So clearly, this aspect of seeing this as a brand building and marketing investment channel is absolutely necessary to justify why you would go into that channel and offer those margins to the retailer, because you're right, the concessions that the retailer is dealing with are high. So you need that certain margin to be able to list that product and to make some money out of it. But for the brands, absolutely, it's brand building. That's how the big brands see that channel.
And then just on the price point question. So okay, so in this example, I just made up the price. I don't know how much I paid for this. I think I got it off Instacart. But if my price in retail, let's say like grocery, typically is $4.99, and I need to build in that margin, but I'm a struggling brand. I'm trying to make my money. Is it okay to recommend a shelf price to you guys that's actually high, like $5.49, $5.99, or no, it's like, it's got to be $4.99. You're going to know, you have the data to check, or you're going to look to me to just be nice and honest about it, or like, really, what's the requirement for people thinking about their pricing?
The short answer, Daniel, is no, it's not okay. However, I will say this. This is really dependent on the pricing policies of each operator, because selling convenience products in an inconvenient location like airport or cruise lines, many operators consider this a premium, just to have that product available. So you'll see, for example, water bottles marked up in an airport where otherwise you could probably buy it for, $1.50, $2 at your supermarket. So, when you play with those price tiers, I don't think it's a big deal. But when you hit the sweet spots of like 12, 15, $10 to $15, that's kind of the sweet spot. You really don't want to be playing with losing your audience or losing volume.
Okay, so maybe a little bit of flexibility for some products that, like, I know Renee, who's asking the question, I don't know what her retail price is, but it's probably in that, like in the $5 range or something. You're not gonna, like, maybe you wouldn't flip if she was proposing like $6 instead of $5 to help her out, ease some of the pricing.
Yeah.
But
if it was me, I would probably tell her, let's create a promotion to get a higher AUR, but still try to meet a cost that works for you. So
AUR,
an average unit retail. So if it was me, I would suggest, hey, I don't want to sell single items at $5, let's sell, bundles of 2 or 3 as an example. And that way we could keep the individual one, relatively simple, relatively low at par, but still have a higher average unit retail.
So you guys, you do a lot of the bundles in stores typically, or would that be just a special? Like a lot of us are used to promo calendars in grocery stores where, let's say, a month out of every quarter, it goes on some kind of a discount. You do it that way, or you do just permanent bundle kind of pricing?
Both. We do both. So we work off a promotional calendar, and the promotional calendar could include that we're going to do bundle pricing, for 6 months out of the year. And if it works, it stays permanent, as an example. So there's an option to do both, but typically the promo calendar is what takes precedence.
And I think maybe what's also important to mention is, because early on we were talking about that we recommend to go via agents or distributor, and we always recommend to go via those who are already specialized in duty free, and this means they know exactly those kind of agreements, so they will not ask, let's say, if it's a $5 product, they are not asking the same kind of margin structure from local market, because they know that the retailer want to make 70%. So they know the structure, and therefore also their structure is completely different from maybe what from a broker perspective in domestic market.
Okay, so if you put yourself in Renee's shoes, or the shoes of somebody here who's like super pumped about this channel, if you were in their shoes, what kind of pricing would you be coming to you guys with? Would you start like a little higher but have good rationale, and then look to your help to figure out like how to actually get it into kind of where it needs to be? Or are there consultants who you think they should ask to help them, or some kind of a model? Just, I think people would want to come and end up in the right place with you guys, and also not leave too much on the table.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways you could dissect that conversation for Renee, and I think that's why Nadine offered afterwards, if you want 20 minutes one-on-one, we could look at that. But I would start looking at everything from, where does Renee stock her product? How is it packaged? How is it shipped? To know is it even worth carrying a product at that price point? And if so, how do I get it to have a higher value wise? But I would have to see that entire route to market.
Cool. Okay. Amazing offer from you guys to just give brands a little bit of time. So I won't stop us anymore on this, but thank you for all that info.
Sure. Okay. Let's see. Where did I leave off? Three. Okay. So this is where we start going into advertising. This is where you've hopefully already built up a good track record, had consistent sales, and now you're ready or being offered this advertising calendar. This promotional calendar. And there's many things that will come at your way. Most of this you already know: sampling, staff incentives, gift with purchases. So typically what a buyer wants to see, especially in this category, is about 10% of everything that I'm buying, I want to see it coming back into driving sales. Through any of these methods will be fine, but that's normally what we'd want to see. And then the fourth factor will then come into aging support. So obviously anything with a shelf life, we want to hedge risk. However, if it's a high turning product at a lower price point, good shelf life, it's less of an issue. And so what we're looking at here is creating a stock allowance for aging support. The beauty of why I really like this is because whether that aging support is from a warehouse perspective, meaning the stock that we're buying and holding in our warehouse, our food trade zone, or whether it's stock at the actual store, I could use this allowance to be able to identify what's going to age in the next few weeks and already put a sampling program in here. And it usually makes the conversations, the negotiations on re-upping the listing much smoother when you give your buyer some assurance that you're looking at hedging risk from aging. Okay, any further questions?
All good. They're very thorough. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to go too deep into this slide. Nicholas will talk a little more about consumer behavior, but as it relates to CPG, snacking items, gifting items, this was interesting. This was shared to us by one of our brand partners. And really the question was, for example, when you're walking into an airport location, when you're walking into a duty-free store, what would be a reason for you to speak or interact with the staff? And you could see the highest number of responses came because of, I can't find my item, I can't find my brand. And that's why I re-emphasize Trex with animation. This is one way to get eyes on your brand. And this, when you do that, this number automatically goes down. But the second one, this is the second number I wanted to point your attention to. Daniel earlier mentioned, hey, I'm on vacation, I want to discover, I want to try something new. And that is certainly true. But what we've noticed around CPG, confectionery, and snacking is that people are very brand loyal. They want to go after the brand that they know what it tastes like, they get gratification and satisfaction from it, perfect. The discovery comes on the Trex, the limited edition, the experience. That's where the discovery will come into as it relates to CPG and consumables. So you can see the number of respondents there on that high number of brand loyalty.
So, I mean, pretty clear the first, like I've seen you, or we've talked about some of this info before, but like, if you're an emerging brand, basically, like, if you want to get into this channel, you need to do activations because people don't just happen upon and discover your product. Like, if you can get listed here, right, make sure you think of something clever to do. It's a great opportunity to get in front of people, but like, otherwise they're just going to maybe be looking for discounts on the stuff that they already know.
Sure, exactly. And that's why some of the topics that I touched on earlier, whether it's sampling, whether it's gift with purchases, whatever it may be, you need to grab that attention of someone who may only have, 5-10 minutes of discovery time and then 2 minutes at the till point, as an example. So you want to be able to do that in very unique ways. And there are some basic cost-effective ways to do that. Again, sampling, staff incentives are very simple, direct ways of doing that. Okay, so a little bit of category insight. So why Trex? What kind of returns could I see in it? What kind of returns can I see if I invest into customizing some packaging or doing some seasonals? These are pre-pandemic numbers. And you heard me mention kind of the sweet spot that we're seeing now on that kind of $10 to $15 range, but in certain locations, even pre-pandemic, that was even more of a premium. So when you do Trex in the gifting category, you kind of are able to see how you deliver a higher AUR. This is music to a buyer's ears. When you then look at destination and you want to figure out, well, if I am being listed, all of a sudden on a Royal Caribbean ship that's going over to, I don't know, Cozumel, how can I play with that? Because then it becomes more of a destination item, more of a, perhaps even to an extent, limited edition item. And then when you look at snacking, so in duty free, we can't forget snacking. Even though you're surrounded by a bunch of food and beverage venues, snacking still consists of about a quarter of all confectionery purchases.
There's a question.
Yeah, and I was just sitting here wondering the same thing too. So Olivia has this a super cool brand called Twirl Milk Tea. It comes in a sleek can. And so for a brand like that, like for a beverage that's canned beverage, what are the kind of opportunities here? Would you consider something like that in some of the duty-free stores, or would mainly be more for F&B?
I think it's mainly more for F&B, but I will say this, that the trend of non-alcoholic beverages is only growing. And at one point, it's only a matter of time before this trend reaches duty-free shops as well. So it's really subjected to the buyer and the direction that they're taking it, very much like seltzer, just, I think already peaked, but became this latest trend within the spirits and alcoholic beverage category. If it's non-alcoholic, ready to drink, that trend still exists. So I would say more F&B, but also opportunities for duty-free shopping.
Awesome, thanks.
Sure. Okay, so I wanted to show you an example of what Trex packaging looks like.
Ice cream. Another question. Is there a space for ice cream?
Wow, that's a good one. So frozen dessert. Okay, so more food and beverage, definitely. There are certain and few airport stores, duty-free operators that carry what can be labeled as the fine food category. And so what that means is that they purposely have to build out fixtures and units if it needs to be cooled to house this type of category, but very few do this. Heinemann is one of the global travel operators who actually built up a fine foods category business, mainly in Europe. And so we would carry back then fine cheeses, we would carry caviar and so forth, and pastas, and we had to build units that purposely could hold and store and keep these things fresh at the retail store.
And I've also, Soraya, I have also seen this in airlines. So I have been served from time to time also, I think it was 𝐾𝐿 ice cream. So there is definitely the possibility to store and to serve frozen desserts.
And that would be through the caterer for the airline, right? Like a something chef. I forget what it's called. Yeah.
LSG gave for me. Those would be the ones. Yes.
Right.
And I've seen it is also not only in first and business. I saw it also in economy class. So there is volume to be made.
Yeah. I wanted to show you an example of what a Trex packaging could look like, and this is also Daniel for your days over at Mars. This is something that, again, very simple, and this actually came from a request that duty-free operators, hey, we don't want to stock and carry and sell single Snicker bars. Give us some Trex packaging. And so that's exactly what this is. This went, I think, up to a 293 gram bag. We ended up launching this a couple of years ago. And then out of this one request came a whole range of other 293 gram bags. I think it even went up to 315, but you could see that these packages, these size bags, are not sold anywhere in domestic market. No grocery store, no fine food store, no specialty market in the US would carry these sizes.
This looks amazing. I know I'm all about better for you brands these days, but man, I did used to work at Mars Chocolate, for not everyone who knows that. It's super cool branding, and I think really interesting when Trex packaging like this can take advantage of like emerging trends like sharing from the chocolate category in this kind of a pack.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. You could see that whole sharing category, how it comes to life from, well, now we have the Trex packaging. How do we display it, and how do we do a basic animation off of it? Then you could see a gondola, how it just got platted, a logo went on it, it's removable. This was probably up to 3 months. And this just turned out to be a very basic activation, but again, a very powerful statement that gets eyes away from, let me try to find, the chocolate bar at the cash register, to something more giftable, shareable, and for the buyer, again, higher AUR at that same high margin. And this example actually also came across different brands that we worked with. So with even a brand like Haribo, you could see how we went, and if you go to supermarket now, you still even see Haribo bags on pegs. or you see them in these pouches, right, on pegs and God forbid on shelves, because then they just kind of fall over and the merchandising looks horrible. And for us as operators, as you're building up a store and your merchandising looks great across other categories, you want the same thing for that gifting, confectionery, consumables category. So we went from a pouch bag developed to a travel retail, this kind of a plastic bear that actually made it much more friendlier merchandise, much larger size, higher price point, because now it's activated, now it's an exclusive, and still has these shareable bags in it. And you can see the end result with how then it becomes an animation on the actual floor. Now, you heard me talk about changing the packaging, but what about the actual ingredients in the product? So Godiva did something like this, where it was the city collection. And so this was not only a special packaging as an homage to some of the most traveled cities and iconic cities in the world, but then also they developed 5 unique pieces that came within this box. And this ended up being, I think, almost like a 6-piece, 12-piece, and 18-piece series. So it touched all the different price points on there. And when it became this exclusive, this nice, that's where someone like me would say, well, I do want it at a savings, as an example, compared to another, 18-piece box that was found in domestic market.
It's beautiful.
And the last thing I wanted to show you then is kind of the pinnacle here. This is what Nadine was talking about in terms of Tony Chocolonely's. This went from a pilot, a test, you can see the packaging here, and why it became an animation and eventually became its own store. This is in Amsterdam Airport. For the millennials and the Gen Zs out there, buyers who are really keen on their message, this brand not only tastes great and looks great, but the message behind it was phenomenal. A lot of you have great messages behind your product. Tony's is all about not only being a sustainable confectionery, but also looking at and caring for child labor as it comes into the whole cocoa making process. Their message really is about having awareness around sustainability in the production process, around child labor. Their message is then to action this, be the voice to this. And the final message is to lead by example. I mean, this is really powerful in our opinion. Not only, again, did the product look good, taste good, but we like that messaging specifically for us, but also around this millennial and the Gen Z audience. And if you ever have a chance to travel and go through Amsterdam, this is the store you'll see. Beautiful backlit drop, and the product itself will have a couple of travel retail exclusives, but the majority of the range is core. It's candy bars. Pretty amazing.
It's beautiful. I love those, like the mobiles, like it feels like a Calder sculpture. It's super cool.
Yep. And so Nicholas, again, the way he described it as a brand's marketing forum, just amazing, powerful statement you can make for that amount of footfall instead of eyes that pass through an airport. It's pretty amazing advertising.
Wow.
Okay, any questions?
I mean, I think we're all good, maybe, but just with this Tony's Chocolonely example, I guess, just especially for anyone who joined late, like this is the dream probably for everybody who's on this call now. Like best, I guess, is best case scenario, you like go and build your, I mean, this is not a massive CPG, Tony's Chocolonely. I know they've done really well, but like, you mentioned before, basically, like you just kind of got in touch with them when they were in their early stages. Then they started working with you guys, like presumably on some basis. And just kind of the opportunity grew and grew from there.
Yeah, I mean, you have this store in Amsterdam. We have them listed, I think, on what, a princess ship. Just simple, basic, but it's pretty amazing the reach that you could have in travel retail as a whole, from airports to cruise ships. To say that you're listed in Whole Foods and H-E-B's and Publix is great. I mean, that's an accomplishment. To say you're listed in, in San Francisco, Chicago, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, and on cruise ships, that's a pretty powerful statement as well.
And especially this chocolate category. I mean, I saw a lot of top brands that you were listing in your sphere are chocolate brands, right?
Yeah, I think last time we spoke, Daniel, I brought the example of Tea Forte, was another discovery brand. Caught it in the early stages, and you could see how that's blown up as well.
Awesome. And then we have one question that came in from Paris, who asked, at certain airports, actually, I'm not sure I totally understand the question. I think Paris is asking if some operators have exclusive agreements with certain companies. I think brought up the point of like Coca-Cola, like they're only going to stock Coca-Cola products. They're not going to, like a Hudson Group maybe isn't going to stock any other brands. Is that often the case, or like categories are locked out by specific brands?
That could be the case. And I think, especially if you're going through a distributor, they usually only or may only carry certain products from a particular group's portfolio. And especially in food and beverage, like restaurants will either carry Coke products or Pepsi products, but that never would they carry both. So that could be the case, but I'm not really sure to what extent and how many airports work on to that scale.
And I think it's also more a question of if like mainstream products, you know, but what we are talking here, you guys are bringing in new products, innovation, disruption, and so forth. So yeah, if you are competing against another Coca-Cola, then it might be difficult. But if you have a product which is very different, I think this is where it gets easier.
Got it.
Okay, with that said, I think I'm right on time.
Okay. Oh my God, you're so good.
All right. So if there are no more questions, I will hand this over to Nicholas.
Maybe one more general question around like volumes, like general volumes for small brands. Let's say one of us is lucky enough to get to work with you guys. How does that actually work? Because I think you mentioned to me something that was super interesting, where it's not like when we sell into like a grocery store, it's often going to be like a recurring order that we do with them. You know, maybe it's going from like UNFI or a distributor, but they're like pulling, you know, once every other week or something like that. And you just think about how fast you're turning into stores. But I know if you're like on a cruise line, like the ship's going to take off and then all of the inventory is just going to kind of, you know, you're going to go through all of it during the ship, but it's more of like one-time orders or more like predictable. How should people be thinking about like volumes, or like what the frequency is for orders that would come from you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely less of a just-in-time inventory approach. It's more around safety stocks. If you speak about our model on cruise ships, we only get one day a week in a small window to replenish the vessel. And so you want to have stock readily available for those deliveries. So I would say we typically don't order, 10 pallets at a time, or to an extent even a full pallet at a time. But the volumes can be healthy. They are reoccurring. We just tend to do opening orders and stock in our warehouse probably more than domestic grocery stores. I think you and I had spoken about the pistachios example. Pistachio also developed a Trex packaging for us, or for the industry, I would say. And I think in half a year, we did close to 2,000 units per flavor. We only carry 2 flavors. And then they want us to trade down to a different size bag, and the shell-less bag. And we stayed away from that because we wanted to keep the higher price, the higher AUR. But the volumes could be there with the right product, the right location. As a case in point with pistachios, another great example for us is Tortuga rum cakes. Tortuga rum cakes for us is everything I mentioned Tortuga rum cakes embodies. Bundles, multi-packs, Trex packaging, animation, sampling, tastings, bonded, FTZ, like they just check all the boxes, and just for a buyer in this channel makes it so easy.
Amazing, super helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I think I was just kind of looking at the list of what we had set out to cover during this session. I think we got through all of it for the product portion. So thank you. I'm just like realizing how much I've learned during this last hour. So thank you very much, Jose, and especially appreciate your promptness and ending on time. It's something that I always respect. Cool. So guys, keep the questions coming. This is great. And it's supposed to be valuable to all of the brands on here. So please keep asking away. Anything that seems like too basic of a question, ask it, because probably we all want to know that same thing, and definitely just ask away. So Nicolas, we are on to your section. So Nicolas will be talking about the customer, which we probably all have been at some point while traveling, have been the customer of this channel. So Nicolas, thank you so much.
No, of course, it's great to be here. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about our customers, our consumers, and I'm gonna put my slides on just in a second. So let me know when it's on.
Got it.
Okay, great. All right, let's have a quick look on the duty-free sales market, the nationalities. Nadine already touched on it. We're talking here about a global market, and the Asian market is huge in that. So the biggest nationality, the biggest spenders are the Chinese, with a share of 13%. But already right here, you can see that's a very diverse customer base that we are trying to sell our goods to. You see the US, I think it's quite interesting. It's rather small with 2.7%. You have a lot of US travelers, but a lot of that travel is happening in the States. So in the States, you don't have that duty-free business, right? So although the Americans travel a lot in terms of duty-free sales, they're not really that big spenders or that big part of the market. So yeah, the one message here, it's a diverse segment. So you really need to figure out who you try to target. If you go to the next slide, the behavior of those nationalities are really, really different. We talked about that the Chinese are big spenders because they go for the big brands. They love their brands, they are emotional about their brands, and they spend a lot of money with all those premium brands. Same a bit for the Eastern European market, the Russians and the Chinese, they want to have the real brands, right? So in the domestic market, sometimes they don't always get the proper goods. So they always go for, if they go into duty free, go with the big retailers, they can be sure that they get the real product, right? And not another fake product. So those nationalities spend a lot of money in our shops. And you see that there are really different behaviors. If you go to France or to Japan, you see they seek a lot the local touch. So they're going much more for the souvenirs, for an experience in the products that they buy versus just the brands they know from the domestic market. So all of this, again, to say that if you're looking into a specific location, you need to understand who are the travelers and what is the nationality, what does the demographic look like in those areas. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit further, and I want to focus on the two channels, on the airport channel and the cruise channel, because those are the two most relevant here in the States. And I think the questions that I saw so far, people are as well interested, especially about the cruise channel here in Miami. So I'm going to dive a little bit into what that means for these two channels. Before the deep dive, let's look at the behavior in general in duty free. So we mentioned that price is still the biggest the reason for people to buy. It's about the price versus quality. So how much quality do I get for the price I do pay? But of course, the price advantage to the domestic market. And I will talk about the airport and the cruise industry. And duty free, it's really important to have the right benchmark for your RSP. Right? Depending on the location you're going to, if it's an airport or a cruise line, again, you need to see what are the travelers, so what will they use as the benchmark when it comes to the RSP. I'm going to touch on this in the next couple of slides. For me, the easiest way to get out of this comparison is the package size. So when Jose was talking about tracks, travel retail exclusive products, easy way to differentiate is the packing size. In liquor, the simplest is that in duty free, you normally sell 1 liter bottles versus the 0.75 in the domestic market, because then already the consumer will see, okay, I get more value for the price I do pay, and it's maybe a bit less easy to compare the price. When you go to the chocolate, normally you have a different size of bar, a different content in terms of the packaging. With a Mars example, you have more grams in that bag than you would have in the domestic market, again, to have a different offering for the domestic. With the pricing, promotions are super important. We talked about the multi-buy, especially in confectionery and in liquor. But there as well, it will depend on who are your customers, because the different countries, the different nationalities, they are used to different type of promotions. It makes a difference if you're used in your domestic market to have maybe a single bottle or single pouch promotion versus a multi-buy or buy X4. Certain countries don't know or are not used to the BOGO, right? Here in America, it's all over the place. So you really need, again, to understand who is traveling through your stores in order to come up with the right mechanism. And if you speak to the buyers, if you speak to the retailers, this will as well show if you've done your homework, if you propose the right mechanisms when you talk about an activation. I'm going to talk about activations later, but I definitely want to echo what Jose said. And the one question that came, okay, when do you negotiate those activations? Me being the one with the team on the shop floor, the operations guy, for sure, I want to know straight from the beginning, what is the promotion package that the brand is offering? Because for my team on board of the ships or on the stores, it's difficult to sell a new brand if there's zero activation around it, right? So I will definitely ask the buying team, with that new product that you're offering me to list, what is the activation plan from the brand? How much do they support my team on the shop floor to get this product rolling? So for me, it's definitely something that should be addressed straight from the beginning with the buying team. The second percentage that the people answer to is the exclusivity for the product. So we touched already on tracks, so trade exclusive, but as well just the differentiation to the domestic market. So it's either a product where the packaging is different or just a product that you cannot find in the domestic market, as simple as that. Gifting is absolutely relevant. It's to treat yourself while you're traveling. You want to do yourself some good, or you just want a souvenir. Souvenirs and gifting, especially souvenirs, is important in travel retail because people are quite proud that they're traveling, right? So if I get a souvenir, I can show to my folks to see, I've been to Hong Kong, I bought this that you just get in that airport. So I can show off to my family or to my people. And of course, if you have a family, you want to bring something back from your travels. You're going to see in a couple of slides, especially in the airport, you have business travelers, right? So those people travel regularly, so they want to bring something back when they come home from traveling as a little gift or treat for their family. It's quite common that we have a lot of gifting in travel retail. And convenience is less often topic. So only 60% answer that convenience. The immediate treat is a reason to buy into duty free. I think there was an interesting question around maybe why is that? You have quite a lot of airports as well where there are those distinctions of what are you allowed to sell in the duty-free store versus not. So I remember when I started, I was wondering why Heinemann is actually not offering water in their stores, right? Because in some airports we were not allowed because the F&B business was supposed to offer and sell water or soda and all of that. Now in some airports this has changed. We're able to offer that, but for sure the airport who's giving concessions to the retailer, to the F&B business, wants to be fair to each partner and give everyone the segment to sell in. So this is one reason why you find a bit less of the convenience, the immediate treat effect in duty-free versus maybe you see it obviously with the F&B business in that area. All right, talking about the airport channel, a little bit of deep dive in here. In airports, as I mentioned, you have the business travelers making roughly 25% of the travelers and the leisure travelers. It's a complete different target group, to be honest. The business traveler is a repetitive traveler. Normally you have your home port, or in this case, your home airport. Could easily be that you have a business traveler going through your shops literally every week or once a month. So for this type of customer, you want to have an assortment, an activation that is ever changing.
right? So you want to surprise him. If he comes to your store, he will only stop if he sees something that is new. And this business traveler, you really need to grab his attention because he is not at that airport to do shopping. He is at that airport to go to his business trip, right? So that's very different to the leisure traveler who is on holiday and is there for fun and maybe has some more time. I will dive on that. The demographic on airports, it's really highly impacted by the location and by the destination offering. So again, if you're offering a product to a retailer, you should understand where that retailer is operating, right? So that you can give him the right arguments why you should list your product, because it is tailored to that nationality. So as simple as that, it makes a difference if you're pitching for a product to get listed in New York or a product to get listed into Singapore, right? So you really, I cannot say the demographic is XYZ. It will depend on that location.
Is that so? The split here for leisure versus business travelers, 75-25. Is that is that similar to who actually flies, or does it over-index on leisure because they're more likely to be shopping in general in the airport because business travelers are all business? They're kind of doing it all the time. They don't browse as much. Is that?
I will make it easy for me. This will then as well depend on the airport, because you just have airports which are more driven by business travelers, especially the more you cater within the domestic market, the more you will have the business travelers going. Versus if you go into a very international airport where the leisure is much higher. I would say if, as a retailer, you do a good job, you get all of them to buy. You just need to find the right activation to grab all of their attention.
Got it.
At airports, pricing is less relevant than in cruise lines, as we will see in a second. So here, pricing is 54% of the people said that pricing is a trigger. It's still more than half. Right? So it's absolutely the relevant issue here. And exclusivity, the strikes topic for 45% of the people. Barriers to buy, it's interesting here at the airports. So when they were asked, okay, why do they not buy? Then pricing is normally the first answer here. But with a pretty high rate and 67%, as well the lack of assortment. That means, and that we saw that all over the world, that especially at airports, we have quite a sophisticated customer group. They want to see a great assortment offering. We at Heinemann, we just started over the last 5 years to really have a good offering and fine foods. So Jose mentioned fine foods. This really became a category where we can distinguish ourselves against others. And this is a product offering you wouldn't have seen before that in airports. But the consumers demand that. They demand that we have a great assortment. Again, depending on the nationality, you always have to lead with a big brand. So we call those like beacon brands, not just because the people demand it, but as well to make it obvious in the on the floor plans and in the shops where which category lives. So if you go into a store and you see a big Johnny Walker sign, you can be pretty sure where the liquor sits in that store, right? So as well as a navigation tool, you need big brands to be part of your offering of the assortment. And at airports, the barrier to buy is, of course, the customs and carrying. So why is that? Customs, because people know there are regulations how much you can bring back to your destination, to your home port, but they don't know the specifics. So we see a lot of people not buying because they don't know, am I allowed to bring this back to my home? Or if I have a transit in a certain airport, will they take it away from me? If I have to go through security again, will they take it from me, right? So this is a big barrier for people just to not buy it. But carrying, of course, as well. So imagine versus maybe a border shop where you drive there with your car, you can easily buy a multi-buy offering, you buy 4 bottles. I'm not sure how many people want to carry around 4 liters of liquid when they are boarding a plane where they have the hand luggage and a laptop on the shoulder, right? So carrying is definitely a reason not to buy at airports. When it comes to the RSP, so the benchmark for the pricing, I see the port of calls that's supposed to be on the other slide. I'm sorry for that. Here, sorry, that's for the cruises. For the airports, it's definitely where people are flying to. It's their home domestic market, right? If you have let's take a Chinese person flying home and wants to buy something in San Francisco, then they will think of how much is that back in my country, right? They will not be interested on how much would that be in the domestic market. That again is relevant to think of who are you targeting and where are they going to really set the right benchmark. It means here in the States, if you're in a very domestic market driven place, then for sure your US domestic market would be the right RSP benchmark. Now we're going to dive into the cruise channel. Cruises, more or less 100% leisure driven. I mean, you always have people like Jose, Nadine, and myself who are cruising for work, so that's awesome. But most of the people are there because they're on holiday. And you really have to keep that in mind, that they are on that holiday mood. So no, because you are with your family, right? I just wanted to distinguish a bit more. It's holidays, but a lot of people go on to cruises because of anniversaries, birthdays, wedding anniversaries, and this is really a big reason why they go there. And you can use this very well to sell goods, especially when you activate and when you interact with people. So it's good to know that people go there to celebrate something. You can really piggyback on that. Demographics. It's very difficult for me to answer overall who is a demographic in the cruise industry, because the cruise brands target the passengers so differently, right? Imagine it will be very, very different experience if you go on a Princess Cruises versus if you would go on a Carnival ship, right? So Carnival, their brand identity is fun. They are the fun cruise line. So you see a lot of young people, a big party crowd actually on those type of ships. Their cruises will be shorter in terms of the days. They will have 3 days, 4 days cruising. Again, very young people who are looking for a different experience. You need to address those people differently in terms of interaction as well as the product offering, versus Princess Cruises, where you have maybe 14 days cruises. The people are 50 plus. They're not there for partying, I imagine. So you really, again, need to know whom are you speaking to? And this is the advantage then as well, if you work with a company like Heinemann or a distributor or an agency, they can take your product and offer it to the right consumers and to the right customers and cruise lines, right? Because we know whom this would fit to. Right?
How do you, is there a way you can kind of summarize or give some examples of products you think, you would think about putting more into cruise line retail versus airport retail?
What I would say is that when you go into the cruise channel, and you will see this when it comes to the animation, right? For me, the aspect of being able to tell a story in the cruise channel is much more important than in airports, because in the cruise channel, some from the other slides, you have much more time to interact with the product, right? And this gives the sales team in the shops a great selling tool. So if you have a great story around your product, if you are able to really materialize this in training materials and POS materials, for me this is very much a link and a match to the cruise liners. So after that, it will really depend on which cruise line we are targeting versus maybe not. So we could maybe brainstorm a little bit about this later on what is more relevant for airports. What is more relevant.
And then let me, I just want to circle back to another question that came up from Irena, which is around personal care brands. I know most of our focus is food and beverage, but she was asking, how do personal care brands like hair care, body care, grooming do as giftable items in duty free? And how do they do well as consumables on cruise lines?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We carry quite, well, let's put it that way, P&C is a big category in cruises. Again, their timing or the time available plays into our favor. On the newest ships that we've launched, and in that category, we have special beauty consultants as well. We take the time and invite the people to get a treatment. That always helps to sell and as well to cross sell. Of course, on cruise lines, the spa environment is for this type of categories. To go into the spa environment would be a very nice way to sell products. I know maybe later on we can talk about a bit about our colleagues at the spa, but they I know from the spa environment, for them to sell products on top of the treatment is huge. They make a lot of money out of that. So when it comes to skincare, hair care, it would not just be the retail business, but as well the spa business, especially in cruise lines. But we do it as well, and we interact a lot with the consumer through special treatments directly in the shop on small counters that we have set up. On one of the ships, we have a Chanel beauty consultant. So when you go to the gala dinner, to the captain's dinner, you can pop by our store and then you get the full treatment. So yeah, absolutely. There's this is happening, and it's a good channel to sell these type of products.
On this category, on hair care, skincare,
Sorry, Jose, give me a second. I'm gonna put myself on mute, and you're gonna put on your mic so that they can hear you.
So on hair care, skincare could also be seen as essentials on a cruise ship. So it's not just the giftable part. The giftable part is, again, remember, more of the premium price point, premium experience, or well-known brand. But if it's not that, then it's also we consider as an essential category. And that's really, if you think about your travel items or travel sized items, right? From shampoos to conditioners to body lotions, body sprays, and so forth. All that is important, is a good business, and obviously is essential on a cruise ship as well.
Cool. And maybe I'll just knock out a couple of the other questions that are coming in also. One person said, Sophie said that she is going to have to leave in a few minutes, but she was asking if we're going to, how you're going to give out contact info for brands that are interested in sending out samples.
Maybe, sorry. Question for you, Daniel. What is the best way? I mean, shall we put it in the chat, or how? Because we decide that we're gonna have one shipping address where this all could be shipped to, so that we can then look at the product and then make direct more meetings with you guys.
Easiest, I think, is if you just want to drop it in the chat now, maybe, and then people can take note of it. And thank you guys again for doing that. That's a super nice offer. And then somebody else had asked about vegan products. Like, are you guys, like, in our world, the plant-based trend is massive, and we're all really excited about consumers picking up more plant-based items like oat milk, that kind of stuff. Are you guys interested in those trends? Or are there other trends like that you're particularly interested in? Are you seeing that happen in travel retail?
Sure. I'll see you on take.
Yeah, we are seeing this happen. This trend is real, and it's not going away. It started a few years ago in travel retail. We see it in beauty products, in personal care, and of course in snacking and fine foods. We already list a couple of vegan products in personal care. When it comes to skincare and SPF products, we are now setting our sights on a healthier snacking assortment. One of the reasons that I was so interested in Good Crisp, but yes, vegan products, plant-based products, they look good and taste good, and obviously it's high interest for us. But those are usually the two key factors that we look at when we see plant-based products. Does it taste good? Does it look good? Before we even get into the pricing, you guys know what I mean.
And maybe also to add on here, I think also for airlines, and in the buy on board section for airlines, I do think that vegan products are getting more and more important, because this is a demand And this is also how airlines can then differentiate and how they can actually get you buying on the airline on board and not in a in a restaurant. So I definitely would say keep your eyes and ears open on the airline channel as well.
And then another question that came in then, I think just generally, like, how do niche food and beverage brands compete and do well? I know we've covered a lot of different aspects of that, but like, okay, so who we're talking to now, we're all like dreaming of getting into these kinds of channels. If we do get in, like what can we do to do well? And I know, Jose, you and I talked about some cool examples before of brands that have done well, but like, yeah, so like how can we as a small brand try to do well, and what kind of buyers do you think would be interested in in maybe more niche or growing brands?
Yeah, I mean, obviously most buyers want to see some history of success already. A good business case already being formed. If you're still not quite there yet, it doesn't mean that the channel is not for you. I think in that case, it becomes more intangible. It goes back to taste good, look good, does it have a good story? Is there sustainability behind it? You know, what kind of goodwill is going into this? Is it community based? Like, these are the stories that we also look for when we're looking at niche brands. But if you have built a small business case, a small success story in a region with a particular retailer, about to pilot with someone, this is also should be brought up, and it's also interesting. All this helps the cases of niche brands being listed in a channel that usually has quite a bit of global, you know, well-known, recognized brands. We're not shy from trying niche brands. We're not shy from trying new brands. But again, the right elements have to be in play there, or have the vision of being in play.
Got it. Oh, and one, we kind of touched on this earlier, but this was a learning for me that like, you can just make a product here in the US, for example, and have your FDA label, and then you guys can sell it anywhere in the world, basically, right? So like, I think just another benefit people may not have thought about is like, you will have international exposure from this without having to print tons of different labels. I mean, I know we talked about that earlier, but like, yeah, they can sell it anywhere in the world when you're making it here. And I mean, anyone who's like gone through the process of relabeling a product, even just for like Canada, like, man, there's a lot to do. But this channel, you don't actually have to do that, which is amazing. All right, sorry, Nicholas, please continue.
I mean, please shoot as many questions as you like. All right, yeah, just to finish up on the deep dive on cruises. So here the trigger to buy pricing 80%. It's super high, but same as for the exclusivity at 73%. On pricing, it's a big trigger, but it's a big barrier. What we see on cruise lines, I mean, Nadine mentioned that the biggest part of the business comes out of the States. That means we have a lot of Americans on those cruise lines. So they are really happy to get the duty-free offering. So for sure, they're gonna compare the pricing to the US domestic market. That is one challenge that we face. And nowadays with the phones in their hands, they really compare the pricing in store. I mean, we all did it probably at some point. So do the people on the cruise lines. They're gonna check what's the pricing in the domestic market and then challenge us to match that pricing. But second, the cruise lines, you know, Caribbean is a very sought after market. The port shopping in those Caribbean islands is a big competition. So they're gonna check on the port pricing, and that's why pricing is such a challenge on cruise lines, because of the US domestic market, but as well because of all the port of calls that the cruise lines are going to. Exclusivity is so high because people are looking for products that they can only find on the cruise ships, especially as well in the logo section, right? So to buy logo and souvenirs that are linked to that cruise line and to all those ports of calls from a cruise line, that's a big driver. So that's why here the exclusivity is higher than maybe you would see it at airports. And on barriers to buy, you see that customs and carrying is less an issue because again, we're here in the Americas. Most of them drive to their home port. It's easy for them to carry stuff away. When we go to our liquor section, liquor is a big driver of the business, especially for Carnival. I touched on the customer behavior of our Carnival guests. We do a lot of multi-buy with these fellas. So we have most of the bottles that we sell is 3 or 4 bottle deals. They just put into the trunk and then they drive off. So it's not a big barrier for them to buy. As I said, the benchmark in terms of pricing, it's the local domestic market, the US market, but then as well the destination and domestic market, so all those port of calls. I want to touch on impulse versus planned, because with all the pricing that we touched on, there's as well some positive, some silver lining here. At airports, the impulse buying is pretty high at 55%. In cruise lines overall, only at 35%, but still a big amount. It's a third over here. Planned a bit less, and in cruises planned 65%. For me, this goes back to the big planning of buying some logo and some souvenirs, because imagine that most of the people who go on a ship for the first time will buy those magnets they're going to put on their first. They will buy the ship model, they will buy the t-shirt, they will buy the inaugural collection of a ship that just got launched. All these are clear planned sales, and as well they know that when they go on the cruise ship they get duty free. They will buy their cigarettes, they will buy their liquor to stock up their home bar. So that's why planned is pretty high on cruise ships. I want to touch a bit more on impulse, because there's definitely an opportunity here on the impulse buying. So in the last couple of years, the impulse buying has gone up in travel retail. This is like an overall view, not just linked to cruises or airports. The impulse buying in 2016 was at 90%. Now you have a quarter of the people in 2019 buying on impulse, and it's based on the millennials who are getting a strong purchases here, and they are more likely to purchase on impulse, which is good news, right? Because we talked a lot about that we need products that have a good story. We need to have products that are that you can find less in the domestic market. Well, this is triggering your impulse, right? That's why you buy on impulse, because you see something you haven't seen before, and that's where the products really need to tap into. Yeah, the impulse buyers are buying a product for the first time. I think that's perfect news for everyone who has an emerging brand to get new consumers to try the product. So that's why as well, sampling and tasting is a strong tool in the duty-free channel to get people to know the product, similar to the domestic market. And in liquor, you would say liquid to lips, right? And chocolate, when they tasted it, they want to buy it. So to use the free goods that Jose mentioned, promotions, it's important. It's an important tool to get some shoppers some browsers converted into shoppers.
That last number is actually super interesting to me. The 54% interact with sales staff. Like, I mean, in a grocery store, I don't know what percentage that would be, but it would, I mean, almost nothing, right? So really, this is like much closer to like a boutique shop experience. So like, what do you think what are the keys when people are interacting sales staff to make that work in your favor if you're a small brand? Probably some of the activations that you guys have talked about, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, these are for me somehow the selling one-on-ones. First of all, the sales staff, they need to be super genuine when they try to sell to the people. I mean, that's how Heinemann approaches it, because we want to be too pushy. Don't want to be too aggressive. But you can only be genuine about selling a product when you feel confident to sell a product. And to be able to feel comfortable, you need a couple of key selling points. And by product, you need 3 key selling points. That's it. So for me, this comes down to the discussion with the buying team. If you want to get something listed as a brand owner, do your homework, right? Offer the full package to a retailer so that he's ready to list your product, and that includes as well the key selling points of your product to give to the sales staff. So my team on board of ships, they cannot know everything by heart. They need to know a couple of facts of your product that will really get the consumer on the hook and into an interaction, right? So yeah, as simple as that. Have a couple of key selling points ready for the sales staff to use in a conversation. And you're right, Heinemann, and especially Heinemann, I think puts a lot of effort into to have the right service on the shop floor. You see a lot of boutiques and airports where you have quite a high density of staff versus square meters, and we are very much focusing on having specialists in each category. As well on the cruise ships, we have a liquor specialist, we have a perfume specialist. I mentioned that earlier. It's really important to have a thorough conversation with the consumers about that product. I'm going to mention this again in one or two slides. On the cruise ships, you have a lot of time to interact with your customer, and you can only have that proper conversation if you know something about that product. Yep. So here the last slide. In America, we have on the impulse buyers. Here in the Americas, you have a quarter of all the shoppers do purchase on impulse. Again, I think that's a big amount of potential customers you can tap into. We mentioned that the millennials are quite impulse buyers. Females are a bit more likely to buy impulse than males. And 40 or half of them are infrequent travelers. I think that's good because we can surprise them in our stores with what travel retail can really be versus a domestic offering. So yeah, really that silver lining is not just all about the price. You can really convert impulse buyers with just having a great story and having a great product offering for them ready when they enter the stores.
These are crazy numbers on the bottom, that 78% of millennials visit the duty-free shop when they're traveling and half of them buy something.
Yeah, I mean the footfall is especially actually in duty-free, the footfall is really good. You see that because in airports, people, if you're not a business traveler, people want to kill time before boarding. It's time to board. On cruise lines, you just have days on that ship, so for sure you're going to go into that store. Now the question is, how can you convert them into buyers, right? The conversion rate is more an issue than the footfall.
Sometimes you have to walk, like in an airport, sometimes you have to walk through the duty-free to get to your gate. That's clever.
Those are the walk-through shops that
I guess that counts.
Especially the business travelers get annoyed because they have to walk through it each time. We of course love it as retailers. But yeah, you're right.
Get sprayed with some perfume on your way to your gate. That's probably good. No.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the promotions at airports. We already saw some fantastic pictures of those stores. I mean, those stores have just the one big advantage: there's a lot of space in airports. Those shopping malls and airports get bigger and bigger, so space isn't really an issue. And we as well have the advantage that we have departure, but as well arrival business. And there you can really talk differently to the shoppers, because on arrival, you know, those are most of them that return will be your domestic customer versus departure. You have that international crowd. There as well, it depends on which airport we're talking about. Nadine mentioned Oslo, huge arrival business. Turkey as well, huge arrival business because the liquor taxes are so high. And then you have other airports where arrival is super tiny and it's all about departure. So, but we can play around in terms of activations with departure or arrival. And we have a lot of space, as you see on the right side, to really go big and then to present your brand. The challenge that you have here is that the attention span is pretty low because the people need to get their flight. So they will always be checking the time. They will always be checking if the gate has been announced. They will always listen to the speakers to see what's going on. So you cannot really interact with them for a long time. You need to be very condensed and very clear on your messaging. So that's why I really want to put emphasis on those key selling points, because and especially in airports, you do not have much time to convince your customer to buy. And then there's the stress level. I'll touch on this in a second. Especially at airports, when you need to catch a flight, there is a certain stress level you're dealing with. We all know that, especially if you're traveling with your family, maybe with little kids, it could be quite stressful in an airport. So the focus for promotions should be highly engaging. You need to grab the attention. You need to convert them, as I mentioned. The interaction has to be simple and a quick interaction. Tasting still works, it's good, but it cannot take ages. You cannot take 15 minutes to unwrap your chocolate, to promote your shake, or to pour a super drink. It needs to be quick because you need to pull the people through, right? So ideally you have I don't know, 100 cups prepared, and then you just serve. So you need to be aware that the people have to go somewhere. It's very different than on cruise ships. And because of the fact that we have those business travelers, we want to have an ever-changing offering. If a business traveler is there, let's say every 2 weeks, and he goes through that every day, every time he has to go through that walkthrough, and he sees the same promotion for 3-4 months in a row, well, then he will definitely not buy, right? You need to show him that you have an ever-changing offering on the promotions that you have. The mechanisms, I mean, price promotion, we will never get around it. In every channel, Rita, you will have to go for the price promotions. But tasting works very well at airports, because in the bigger stores, you always have tasting bars or the opportunity to set up tasting bars. You have the facilities there as well to run tastings. But it has to be entertaining, right? The people want to get distracted. As you see here, the attention span is small or short, so it needs to be entertaining to grab the attention of the people. So cruise business is different. The one big advantage you have on a cruise line is time. So you have people on board for several days, and this is a huge advantage when you're trying to sell stuff. You have the ability to really create a connection to your customer. It's very, very likely that your customer will not show up once in your store. He will show up a couple of times for a cruise. So simple selling skills like getting the name of that passenger and asking him how his shore excursion was, and to really get the connection of the couple of dates will help you to sell any product much better. One challenge that we have though is the competing entertainment. There's so much happening on a cruise ship. There are theater shows, there's all the restaurants, there's all the funky stuff you can do on a cruise ship. You need to convince them that there's a good reason to come to your store, not just because they are bored. Another challenge is the space. There's limited space on cruise ships, so it needs to be what we're doing needs to be highly visible and as well engaging with the customer in our stores. Now the focus, where I would like to lay the focus in promotions, is to, what I mentioned, establish a relationship to the customer, because they will be in your store more often and you have time to interact. That's why here the focus can be on educational and on that storytelling. We are even sometimes doing cross promotions where we invite the people for an event that takes an hour, where we are promoting watches together with a whiskey tasting, and then they get an education about that category. We could do the same with the food pairing, where you talk about perfume cosmetics with some certain scents, and then you serve different types of chocolate or other confectionery with that, right? So there's a complete different type of activation you can do on a cruise ship that you just do not have the time for at airports. So that's why that storytelling part is something I mentioned already a couple of times today. And then cross-category. If you have that relationship to the customer, you were just talking for half an hour about a watch, well, it would be a pretty good idea as well to take that time with this guy to go over to the jewelry section to convince him that he should buy maybe diamond for his wife, because they're on their anniversary, right? I mentioned earlier that anniversaries are a big deal on cruise ships. You have those weddings, you have those 40, 50, 60 anniversary, whatever, and this screens for high ticket products, right? Fine jewelry and watches is a huge category. So that can be a good seller, but the cross category goes for all categories. So this would go very well for the whole liquor, tobacco, and confectionery segment. Just to add this little treat for the kids, for the family that is with you on board, to increase the basket size. The mechanisms, as I mentioned, price promo, no way around. We do cabin drops on cruises. That means when you, in the evening when you return to your cabin, you see the promotional offering available in the stores, just to pull the people back into the stores. The raffles is something that we do a lot on cruise ships, just again to get the crowd back into the store, so that the staff in the shops can really interact with the passengers. So I mentioned that there is a certain stress level when it comes to the airport channel, and I wanted to just touch on that. I mean, we all been to the airport, and we know how stressed we are till the point where we get either through immigration or, depending on the airport, through security. There is you don't think that much about shopping, but once you get through that security control, the immigration, that's all of a sudden where you realize, oh, I'm like 2 hours early, or at least an hour and a half early till I'm boarding. So what are you doing? You are strolling through all those retail and F&B offerings, and that's the best situation where we as retailers can interact with the consumer, and where the brands can interact with consumer. What I highlighted here on the bottom is just where can we get digital, where can we get more like the physical communication. So normally the retail always focuses, okay, what can I do? How can I communicate the brands when the people are in my store? But there are much more touch points with that customer. So we should, and we are thinking of how can we communicate a type of promotion while they are checking in online or booking the trip. They are taking the Uber through the airport. They're browsing on the mobile. How can we already interact there with them, give them push notifications? When they check in, obviously, they are not looking at their phone so much. So there are the billboard, so the physical advertisement kicks in. Same after the security, when they stroll around the airport, that's where you have the billboards, the in-store signage. But there, as a retailer, you want to send push notifications when they pass your store and they do not go in. Well, you want to give them a notification that you might have a great offering of the product, or maybe before they leave Miami Airport, they are supposed not to forget this one local item that they only get here. So there you can be very creative on how you communicate digitally to your consumer. And yeah, last but not least, just before you board, you sit at the gate, you wait. Again, you have your phone in your hand, you just browse on the free internet, and there you have good opportunity to get the people back in store, or what the retailers are working on to deliver the products at the gate. So there are multiple digital touch points that we are thinking of as retailers, and in all of those touch points, it's very easy to integrate a quick and simple message about a product that you again can maybe only buy in this specific airport. So that's why it's so important. I wanted to raise that here. Last but not least, and that's a very simple slide, I want to talk about the difference between the retail and the wholesale business, just to touch a little bit on why Heinemann is maybe so unique. Yeah, so special and so unique. So Heinemann offers two very different models of business. So one is the retail business, where we are the concessionaire of the stores, right? So we run the entire show, from owning the product to owning the stuff, our own stuff on the shop floor. So we are the concessionaire with all the risks. There, of course, we are the retailer needs to get a high margin because we need to cover our own fixed costs, it's our own operation. We have the risks of that operation with all the guarantees that we have to pay to the landlords, right? In their own retail, for us as a retailer, of course, we can use it as a brand building, right? The more retail stores we have, the more prestige the locations are that we are in. That's a way to build the brand as a retailer. But I think we touched on this several times now, for the brands themselves to use our stores and those locations and all those cities out there, it's a massive brand building tool. Now, the wholesale business is something very different. In the wholesale business, we are serving customers that themselves have the stores, right? And this is something where, yeah, actually Heinemann started with that 140 years, that we were serving customers in the retail, travel retail industry. And there, the offering of Heinemann can be really from A to Z, depending on the cooperation that we do have with our distribution partners. So we could just offer them a catalog, a price list, and they pick whatever they want and they buy it. But of course, if we have a service agreement with them, an exclusive contract to supply their stores, we are offering everything from the whole category management, the whole buying expertise, the whole activity planning. We do that for them, right? But it means as well that we are serving a lot of customers in different channels. And therefore, we would be able to judge, okay, that product that you're offering to us, is that something that we could use in our own retail stores? Because we know that product matches super good to Carnival, or maybe matches super good to that airport location we have in this state or in that country. But as well, we know that we might have a customer that serves the Paraguay airport, or that serves maybe the Uruguayan border, and there it will fit super well, right? So it's a big advantage that we have, that we have certain we have a wide reach to different channels through our wholesale business. There, of course, if we as Heinemann, when we sell to another customer, the margin expectation for us as Heinemann is lower, but overall for the food chain, yeah, we need to share the margin with our customer, who then has to sell it in their stores. But it could be a great tool for to be a volume driver. So I would definitely encourage everyone to not just think about, okay, what can I do to be in business with Heinemann, to be on that one Odyssey of the Seas, new build Royal Caribbean, that flagship, but think about the whole cake here. So how can you come up with a product that is relevant for all the channels and all the customers that Heinemann serves, and how can you address the wholesale business versus the retail business? Because it will just make it easier for Heinemann to list it if that's a product that is relevant really for the whole portfolio that we are offering. And this will make it easier for you to have this high sell-in volume that you need to justify why you're giving us maybe margins that are slightly higher than other channels. So that's why I just wanted to touch on the retail versus the wholesale business, because it's a very unique setup that Heinemann has versus other duty-free players out there. That be it from my side.
That's amazing. That's super helpful. And I think I just was reminded looking at some of those pictures of like Haribo, and thinking about also like Toblerone, which for me is the classic at like airport retail, where like I didn't even know for a long time if you could get it outside of an airport. But like, you know, it may, like, even if people are just kind of breezing by a duty free and don't even purchase something, like when they see your brand there as you're starting to build your distribution other places as well, like it just puts it in a really nice context for people to see it. And it's like they will just have a nice like premium association with it, because it is available in these really nice stores, even if they don't end up trying it. Like, you're getting a lot of impressions that way, if you think about it from just a pure like marketing standpoint. Even for the people who don't buy it, just like them seeing it in there, they will kind of remember the like premium halo that it has around it when they then see it kind of locally. But yeah, just interesting to think about that. And then also how like Toblerone and I think Haribo, really like a lot of their sales come from that. And I also, when I was in the chocolate business, I remember people saying in like countries like Brazil, even like brands might try to launch first in something like travel retail, because they wanted to establish it as like an international brand that's really high quality, that people are scrambling to get in airports before they even kind of enter the local market, just to have that, I don't know, luxury or premium connotation around it. But just cool to think about that as you were going through your presentation.
Absolutely. And I just remember there was one question around the ROI of that business, and especially when we talked about all those activations. I think if you tap into the full potential of those different channels that we do have, definitely you can this can be a profitable business, because with a marketing offering, we're of course not talking about all those HPPs or those high profile promotions that you saw on the pictures. That's something you would only do when you're like an international established brand, and clearly those big promotions, they're not profitable as itself. So I mean, you will spend easily 50K on something and maybe just sell a couple of 100 units a week or so. But this is the brand building part that definitely all the big brands go for. But just to get launched, the type of activations that we are talking about is maybe to get the head of a gondola and just do a cladding around that, put your product under, have some show cards. There the expenses are not high, and therefore for sure you can have a positive return on going to this channel. Otherwise we wouldn't see all those great brands yeah, appearing in that channel. So I just want to touch on this question that came earlier.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. I think that is probably the end of the prepared stuff. I think we got through all the questions too. I don't see any in the queue. I haven't seen any new ones come across yet. Hopefully everybody's took note of the team's generous offer to take samples from you guys. Nadine posted the address that you can send product to here in the chat. So you guys can send over samples and then email her. She put her email there to set up time with the team to get some customized feedback from them and some suggestions on how to approach the channel, which is just one of the nicest offers we've ever had in this group. So thank you guys again for that. That's just, and just for all of the time that you put into preparing this super useful information for the community here. I mean, just incredibly touching and kind thing for you guys to do for a subject that is so like dimly understood by all of us. So I know I was really excited to just learn from all of you. Any unless there are any other questions from the team, I don't know if you guys have any kind of closing thoughts or closing advice for brands around approaching this channel.
Well, I just want to ask to thank everyone for the interaction. I think it's great to have seen so many questions popping up. It was really great. Otherwise, it could have been really boring. But this was perfect because it helps us to just speak about what we love. And so thank you so much for being interactive and showing up on a Saturday morning.
Yeah. Cool.
Same here. Daniel, thank you so much for giving us the platform to talk about a channel which is so dear to us, and I guess you guys could see that this is really something we are passionate about. Yeah, and just coming here, showing up and listening is your first step into duty-free. So thank you for being here, and wishing all of you guys who want to get into duty-free good luck. And as we said, our offer stands. Just send us some samples, and then we will have a very open and candid conversation with you. Because even if you might not fit into the Heinemann portfolio, this doesn't mean that you don't fit into the duty-free portfolio. So yes, as we said, we will have an open conversation with you, because that's the best we can offer, just our honesty.
All right. Amazing. Thank you guys again. This was super special. I just pasted the info to send in contact your stuff again in the chat. So if you're on mobile or something, just make sure you click on the chat function and you'll be able to see it. Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys again so much. I hope everybody has a good rest of the weekend.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for organizing. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.